Hello and welcome to IGN at Gamescom Now, exclusive coverage of the biggest video game convention on Earth. I'm Brian Altano, this is Max Scoville, and this is day 3 of Gamescom. Max, what can we expect?
Coming up next, we have Disintegration from the creator of Master Chief. It's a new Halo-ish looking thing. It's a brand new thing, and it's exciting, and we're going to be finding out all about it. And then after that, it's Journey to the Savage Planet. More space stuff. This time, it's a little bit silly. And then after that, still to come, is Blasphemous.
IGN at Gamescom Now begins, well, now.
Gamescom 2019, the heart of gaming and the biggest video game convention on planet Earth. Over 370,000 hardcore video game fans. One building, over 1,000 video game exhibitors from more than 50 video game loving countries. Gamescom 2019 is here, and IGN is covering it all with 5 full days of non-stop video game reveals, trailers, exclusive gameplay footage, interviews, show floor booth tours, and more. Day 3 of Gamescom 2019 is here, and IGN has your back with a full day of live coverage. We're talking to the people who make some of the best new games in the world, and maybe even a few surprise guests. Will we interview the legendary Crash Bandicoot himself? That might be difficult because he's not a real person, and also he doesn't really talk, but maybe we'll try it anyway. We should ask him about his jeans and why he doesn't wear a shirt, and if he shapes his own eyebrows because they look great, and I respect a man who isn't afraid to embrace personal hygiene. Anyway, IGN Live's non-stop coverage of Gamescom 2019 begins right now.
Welcome back, everybody. This is IGN at Gamescom. I'm Max Scoville. One of the biggest new developments in the world of tech and gaming is Google finally throwing their hat into the gaming ring with Stadia. Here to tell us about it is VP of Product John Justice, and here to ask lots and lots of questions, Tina Meany, Brian Altano.
Hello.
So, Stadia, streaming gaming from Google.
Yeah, it's something that we've been working on for a really long time. Had to make sure that the tech was ready to let everybody have a really good experience, and now it's here. So we're hands-on here at Gamescom. We have thousands of people who are trying it now. We're showing Mortal Kombat 11 and Doom Eternal, since those are some of the hardest games to make feel great. And so what better test to show it off?
Are you doing the Coke test, though? Is this on Stadia, or is this on another platform?
Ooh, that's a good one.
We aren't Pepsi challenging it here, but a lot of people are doing side-by-side kinds of things. And if you haven't tried it, come try it. It's pretty great.
Now, something I'm curious with sort of the, obviously the goal here is to have seamless, no latency, just feels like just normal gaming.
Yeah.
Should be. Do you see like a sort of reluctance or skepticism from developers who make faster paced games versus like maybe a turn-based or slower game? Like obviously Doom and Mortal Kombat are two of the fastest games out there.
Yeah, yeah. We did before. Back before people could try it and see it, people wondered about it, and then they saw there are things that we can do to speed it up on where we run it that let us make it as fast, and in some cases faster, than you can by buying a console. And so that's a pretty cool thing. So as soon as people see it, then they start talking instead about, hey, what can I do with it? What's possible only in cloud? And that's a pretty cool conversation to have.
Well, you just stole one of my questions, because I was going to ask you, especially with multiplayer games, what is possible with cloud? Can we possibly see a future with like 1,000-player servers and crazy battle royale games? Like,
totally.
What are we going to do with this thing?
Nothing to announce today, but the ideas people are playing with and trying are pretty mind-blowing. They're all things that you could never fit on a console, you could never fit on even a gaming PC at home. So giant worlds, better artificial intelligence, because we can add AI chips for NPCs, those kinds of things. You'd never be able to get those at home, but we can get those up on our servers. And we're constantly upgrading the servers. So right now, our machines, they're faster than anything you can buy in a console by a pretty good chunk, but we're already working on the next and the next and the next, because we constantly upgrade.
I was going to say, gamers are inherently collectors, right? Like we hoard and gather things. We've seen physical media disappear over the last 20-something years.
Yeah.
That's been hard at first because we had cool game cases with like inserts and color manuals. Now we all have digital libraries.
Right.
Moving into Stadia, we kind of don't even have that, right? They're sort of stored somewhere else. So what does it look like when you start to build out your library on Stadia?
It's pretty much the same as anything digital today, except you don't have to wait for the downloads, you don't have to wait for the updates, and it's faster and better. so I mean, I think beginning of the last generation, I was getting things on disk, mostly on disk. But by the end of it, I just didn't want to be bothered. And so I would get everything digitally. And I just liked that convenience of having that. Now that I'm spoiled by playing on Stadia, I don't want to go wait for it to download, or wait for it to update. I just want to play right away and on any screen. So great. The TV, someone wants to use the TV, fine, I'll pause it, I'll go move to a laptop and keep playing, or I'll do anything there. I don't have to wait for any kind of setup.
So speaking of that library, I'm curious, like, you guys just had a couple announcements right before Gamescom kicked off proper. You had your digital presentation of a couple more games that are coming to Stadia, and one exclusively. So what are you guys thinking of when you're thinking about the partnerships and in terms of how you want to grow that library? I mean, obviously, like, every game ever made, probably, but, you know, you're repping Cyberpunk right now. So what are you guys thinking when you're building that slowly?
Well, I'm excited about Cyberpunk, but we're out there, we're really bringing everything in. So when you see us, we're going and working with everybody. You'll see a lot of logos up there of people who we're working with. And so you can expect that we're going to bring all the things you'd expect to have on all the platforms. And then after that, the stuff that we're working on and will be building, that's where you're going to get even more of the things that are only possible in the cloud.
Now, you mentioned like not having to wait for downloads. I think that's sort of an amazing thing in terms of the day-to-day, but also the practicality of being there at a midnight launch or waiting for the timer to kick in. Is that something you guys are targeting to sort of, when a game unlocks with everybody else, you're sort of you could potentially be the first system to be able to play it?
That's one of the extra bonuses that you get. It makes it easier for us to go do things like bring people in on a beta or in testing at different versions or on doing those kinds of instant launches. All that's possible. So we're now starting to see developers talk to us about how they can bring it into their gameplay too, which is kind of cool. I think we'll see some ideas there in the next year that we'll talk about later. But the interest from the developers all up's been huge. We've got thousands of developers right now who've all applied to go put games in the platform. We have hundreds that are currently active that we're working with right now. We have our next batch ready to announce that we're getting already, even after this Connect, and so they'll just keep coming.
How is the sort of pre-announcement reception from developers compared to sort of post-launch? Because obviously, once you kind of get out there and you blow the doors wide open, let the cat out of the bag. You kind of there's more sort of sizzle to that. But when Google calls you on the phone, and you're like, "Hey, we're working on something." Was there confusion over it? Was there disbelief?
At first, there was, but that was before people tried it. A lot of people were skeptical, just saying, "Hey, I really want to try it," and that's okay. It's something new. It's something different. Once they tried it, things were a lot better. A lot of people got to try it at GDC who hadn't tried it before in the game development side, and so that really moved it. And so we don't really have conversations anymore around, "Is this going to work?" or "Can this be great?" Instead, it's about, okay, when are different things coming? And we work with them a lot on things like cross-play, cross-progression, making sure that you can play across all the platforms. We think that's really important for next gen, that we just be open. That's a very Google approach. And so we work with them on things like that now.
So you mentioned crossplay. Is that a conversation that a lot of developers are interested in? And like, what's the progression of that? How's that been going?
They are. So the developers are usually pretty excited about it. They see it's good for players. We see it's good for players. We think that's a core piece of next gen. We just don't think we should have the kind of walls that we've had in the past. That's something that I think slowly the platforms are coming around to. And so, but with enough push enough push from us and enough push from the developers, I think we'll get there. It'll just take a little bit of time.
Yeah, just got to get everybody on board.
Yeah, but we want it for everything. We want every single title to be on here with cross-play and cross-progression.
Now, obviously, you guys have multiple options in terms of how to get into this. One of them involves the controller that Max held up earlier. I want to hold it again because it's really good. Like and I haven't played a video game with it yet.
Here,
but
let's get a close-up of this.
Yeah, just actually playing it is it's really, really good looking. So
it is hard to get a controller to be great. I'm a keyboard nerd. I have 10 different keyboards with custom switches and all that kind of stuff, and I care a lot about that. We had to work on these for years and years. We had hundreds of prototypes. But when you feel something like on the D-pad, just like the collapse there on the dome switches, it's really hard to get that to be just right and let you roll combos, for instance. So we had to work really hard to get that to be great. The grips, that kind of rounded grip that you have, that's something that we did on purpose because that lets you do claw-style grips, it lets you do standard grips, it works across a whole variety of hand sizes really well. And we'll talk more about this stuff later, but we had one of our head designers actually worked on knife handles and used knife handles because chefs use different grips for different ways that they hold them. And we needed to make sure that we had that kind of comfort and all-day comfort that would work here. So that's what led us to the design we have.
Yeah, I really like the face buttons. They feel nice and soft. The D-pad's clicky. The sticks are really smooth. The shoulder buttons are great. This is like, honestly, to be completely transparent, when I first saw this controller, like pictures of it, I was like, I don't know, I'm a little skeptical about that. But now I'm holding it and I'm completely sold on this controller. This is a good piece of tech. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, we have 3 of them here. We don't have the special Founders controller, so we have a special, that limited edition one that we're doing just this year, and that's for Founders. We let you get that night blue version. That's pretty cool.
Now, John, we see. I know you're obviously dealing with a lot of indie developers because they're always attracted to like a new platform. Have you seen any sort of developers excited about the possibilities of using Stadia? They always want to, indie devs get a little bit weird. They want to mess around with new tech. What kind of possibilities are sort of possible with this? Like could get weird.
Well, let's see. There's the whole range. There's a lot of stuff where people are looking at things like how do you plug into YouTube. We see games. Some people are looking at how can they make their games more watchable or make it so that people watching the games can interact with them in fun ways. We think that's kind of cool. It's interesting when you start thinking about YouTube as a multiplayer lobby where you might invite your friends to watch you play and then they can jump in and play with you. It's just even a private thing. That's kind of cool, just what you can do in that direction. So there's that whole side. And then there's on gameplay, what can you do when you have gigantic servers that are constantly getting better? So huge machines that can handle the thousands of users, or natural language processing that can get you realistic voice conversations, because that's tech that we have at Google, and we can make it available to the game developers. So the indies we're talking to and the big folks, they're exploring kind of, okay, what can I do next, and what's going to be the most fun for the people who play my games? Because that's what it's all going to come down to, how to make the games the most fun.
Yeah, you were talking about how now is the right time. I'm sure you guys have theoretically been talking about this for a while, but you wanted to wait until technology was ready, and I wanted to ask you what that meant, but in a lot of ways it's also cultural. It's this whole kind of expanse of this like YouTube generation that you're talking about, where it's very suitable for that kind of a bigger, expansive experience.
Yeah, we had to make sure on the tech side that we could deliver an experience that be at least as good as what you could go buy in a console. And so we had to get there. That had to be a bar. And so for us, we had to go make it so that there's no perceptible latency, that we could make the quality higher. That's why the servers they're huge. They're just so much bigger than you can get in a console. We had to have that, and we also had to have internet connections be good enough across the world and across the countries that we're going in. And so they keep getting better, and so now we're at a place where most people can play and most people can get a good experience. And so that's something that gets better every month too. It gets better with the ISPs and the telcos are moving forward. 5G is coming, and then on our side, we're making it so the games take less and less bandwidth. So, when we had Assassin's Creed Odyssey, we did a test of that in Project Stream. I don't know if you got a chance to play that last year, but that took about 25 megabits per second to get a great 1080p experience. We can do that now in down to 15, even down to 10 sometimes, because we're just getting better at squeezing the stream at the same level of quality and upping the quality. So we keep driving that side down on Google's tech, and then we're working with all the networks to make it really good on the edge. And the combination of those two means we can reach a lot of people.
Great. Well, I'm dying to check that out when it's out in the wild. It's here at Gamescom for people to get their hands on. We have so much more coming out of Gamescom. We've got to take a quick break right now. We'll be right back.
Hey, Nick, did you hear about the new Marvel news?
No, what happened? What happened? Hey, what happened? Tell me.
Has this ever happened to you? Good news! It doesn't have to! The Daily Fix is here every day with a concentrated dose of all that gaming, movie, TV, streaming, internet, and puppy news you need to survive the work week. All right, so puppy news isn't on it yet, but I'm working on it. Roll the thing!
Reggie Fils-Aimé is retiring.
Eagle-eyed fans are combing through every last frame.
I can't prepare. Oh.
Stay right here on IGN.
And keep it locked to IGN.
IGN Now. New news that's new to you.
Introducing the all-new Up-It News.
Don't touch it.
What's wrong with you?
Get corn snack.
Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up at noon, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom Now, presented by Alienware. We're Game. I'm here with Eddie G from Alienware Product Marketing, here to tell me about some of the cool new PC gaming stuff you guys are showing off. You had a big announcement that PC gamers might want to hear about.
We absolutely did. We're so excited. We refreshed all of our gaming products. In fact, the Legend Industrial Design has come to our new Aurora desktop. So 3 new displays, 2 new keyboards, 3 mice. Basically, everything that you put on a desk has been updated to the Legend Industrial Design, and we couldn't be more excited to give gamers the very best that gaming has to offer.
Now we've got one right here. What are some of the key features of the new lineup
absolutely.
here?
So the new Legend Industrial Design has been expressed on Aurora in a way that brings form to function. So we've got benefits that range from ergonomics, but the most important one is performance. So the new design is actually dropping temperatures at the voltage regulation heat sinks by up to 8%. Now, if you're into performance, if you want to conduct overclocking, that kind of thing is totally important and critical. So performance junkies will love it. From an ergonomics perspective, we've got the I/O ports are now in the front. Our Stadium Alien Effects lighting is lighting those ports. So if you're ever playing in the dark, you can see what's connected, what's not connected. That is a true benefit of the system. And as always, Aurora has tons of toolless upgradability options. Your graphics can be upgraded without tools, your hard drives, your memory, and it's very easy to access those internal components. So it's not just beautiful and looking amazing, but it is also very functional and very powerful.
Great, and that is one of the biggest problems with PC gaming is worrying that your gear's going to go out of style, and this is a great way to kind of combat that, yeah?
Absolutely, absolutely. Before Legend, we had the Epic Industrial Design, launched in 2013. It's been 6 years. Legend is amazing. People are loving it. And by the way, the desktop is available in a lunar light color, as well as a dark side of the moon color as well.
Awesome, and of course, esports is all the rage these days. Is this the kind of gear that's good for a professional player?
Absolutely. I mean, the Aurora is the PC desktop of choice for esports. We've got Auroras all over Team Liquid's training facility. We're using them in different competitions. It's proven time and time again to be an incredible workhorse that is also scalable over time. So as games become more demanding, we can have upgrades performed in a cinch. So performance, upgradability, airflow are all prioritized and just perfect for any competitive gamer.
Great. Now, escalation of displays is, of course, a big, huge thing. We see them getting bigger and higher resolution. Yeah. Can you talk about how Alienware is dealing with that moving forward?
Yeah, so we're very, very excited. Everything from our laptops to our desktops are seeing incredible display options. So when you look at our desktops, we've announced 3 new monitors. We have a 27-inch, a 34-inch curved, and the monster 55-inch 4K OLED 120 hertz capable FreeSync monitor. It is breathtaking, it's awesome. So whether you want to be immersed, whether you want a really, really big screen, we've got different options for the desktop. On the laptop side, We've got OLED panels, we've got eye-safe panels that reduce the blue light emissions to our eyes, and we've got refresh rates that extend all the way to 240 hertz. It is just breathtaking. So if you're a competitive gamer, or if you want a beautiful screen, we got you covered.
Beautiful. Now, of course, that's great for displays that you look at when they sit on a desk. What about the head-mounted ones? Is this rig right here well-suited for people who want to get into VR? Maybe check out the Valve Index?
Absolutely. So actually, not just our desktops, but our laptops are also VR capable. So if you want to experience a VR experience from any of the VR providers, we definitely have a configuration that is suitable for you, and you can check it out, get lost, and enjoy the magic.
Awesome. Now, of course, one thing I'm curious about, these are beautiful designs. Like, you guys have always been really good at managing to, like, kind of just modernize your look and just kind of stay ahead of the curve. Like, can you talk a little bit about sort of the design philosophy over at Alienware?
Absolutely. So the Legend Industrial Design has been a labor of love, spanning multiple teams, so much talent, and years of just inspirational moments with different sci-fi films, but also taking cues from designs from the past. So we've merged the most exciting inspirations from sci-fi with old designs, and just having our teams work together to come up with philosophies and themes that we find are critical to the Alienware brand. So while it's totally different from anything we've had before or anything out in the marketplace, it's still an Alienware system. And you can tell from miles away. Well, not miles away, but pretty far away.
One of these days you'll be able to see him from space. Eddie, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. We have so much more coming out of IGN at Gamescom now. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Destin Legary here for IGN Live at Gamescom 2019, and Death Stranding is a big hit at this event. Joe, they teased that they would be showing an additional trailer.
Yeah.
You just got out of the demo. Take us through the experience.
Okay, so as with everything in Death Stranding, I've come out slightly more clear on the story and slightly more confused about everything else to do with this game.
Okay.
Essentially, this extra trailer that they're showing is called Briefing. It features Sam, Norman Reedus' character, and then Amelie, who is the new president of the United Cities of America.
Okay.
And D. Hardman, who we've seen very briefly before, the guy with the skull mask.
Yes.
They are attempting to convince Sam to pick up their work in connecting the disconnected cities of America after a cataclysmic event that's caused all the BTs and all the problems that we've seen in previous stuff.
So America's in disarray because of these cataclysmic events that they've been sort of teasing in trailers and such.
Crucially, the cities are all called not cities. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But basically, you're traveling from Washington. This scene takes place in the Oval Office. You're traveling from Washington, what is now something else, but is called would-be Washington in our world, to the West Coast, to Edge Knot City, where a group of separatist terrorists called the Homo Demons have taken the president, although she's still able to project a hologram to Washington.
Got it.
Do you got it? I don't got it.
Well, I mean, there's bad characters that you need to stop. Right?
Yep.
And the Holo Demons, as you said, are the ones that you need to stop.
So the interesting thing...
Is that the entirety of the demo? So they're separated and then you run into the factions?
Yeah, so it's essentially a cutscene in which they show Sam a hologram of all the work they did trying to connect the whole of the United Cities of America.
Yeah.
Her getting kidnapped, and then Sam, at the end of the trailer, actually saying he doesn't want to do this and leaving.
Yeah.
So we don't know how he gets... Because what we've seen from the gameplay we saw earlier this week, shows that he's doing what they asked. When he goes to the Jeff Keighley character's weird trailer in the middle of nowhere, he puts what's called a Cupid, that floating necklace, into his terminal, and that's him reconnecting that area with the East Coast.
Oh, so he does interconnect a little bit.
So we have seen him taking on the mission they want to do. It's just at the end of this trailer, he says no. So between then and there, he's reconvinced somehow.
Got it. So the Jeff Keighley trailer, that's an example of how they're going to have all these side characters in the open world, right?
Yeah.
So just guessing, basically, maybe he chose no in this scenario, but maybe when you play, you can choose yes. Did it seem like a pre-canned cutscene?
No, it is a full cutscene. It's a story cutscene. So that's definitely not a choice. So that's a part of the story. I think
this is a core story element.
Yeah, this seems to be really early in the game. And then at some point after this, the story is going to have him reconvinced for whatever reason. I'm assuming this is pre him having the BB on his chest. He hasn't got he's not wearing any of the gear we've seen before. It looks like the earliest trailers of Death Stranding, where he's in that like tank top, that like leathery tank top. So that something seems to have happened. They're talking about how he disappeared and they were doing all this work without him. So there's some long interconnected story that we're jumping into at the halfway, well, you know, at the early point.
Paint me a picture of what you actually saw aesthetic-wise. So, like, this world that he's in, is it still the open world with rocks?
So this isn't a game. This isn't gameplay at all. This is just a story cutscene that takes place in the Oval Office. So he's just talking to these two characters in there.
He's in a building that's non-dilapidated. Like it's a well-structured building.
It seems like it could be that it's a projection of some kind, because when they walk around, like lights, so like the background's turning off, like. It's unclear if this is the real Oval Office. It's just designed to look like it.
I'm really intrigued by all the aspects of gameplay that they've shown. It seems like there is a delivery mechanic where that's your core responsibility as Norman Reedus' character to deliver these packages to various people in the world and then accept new quests. This sounds like this is the first bit of story that we're getting of more of your overarching goals for the entire experience.
Yeah, this is setting up what this game is going to be. Like, they're contextualizing why we're seeing him delivering all this stuff all over the United Cities of America.
Do you have, based on all the Death Stranding stuff that you've seen, do you have any better understanding about the spirit world or any of that stuff and how that is going to interplay with the core story?
Not from this story. So we know there's some hint that Amelie, the character he's talking to, the new president, has died but is somehow now ageless. Okay. So there's something to do with the spirit world there, but it's not made clear here what's going on with that stuff. Like, this is very much just Sam's got a job to do. He's got to get from here to here to here to here, and then essentially recover the kidnapped president at the end of that on the West Coast.
Yeah. So, Joe, your overall take on Death Stranding, where are you at with it right now? Personally, I'm really intrigued about figuring out how all these mechanics interplay. Yeah. I'm getting a better idea of what some of the gameplay elements are going to be that I'm experiencing. I still want to know how that Shadow Realm plays with the core story though.
Well, that kind of thing is that is the key question that's still left. After all of these trailers set up the idea that this is a game about delivering, about reconnecting, about getting from place to place. Like, it seems like traveling is the major point. And this story trailer, more than anything else, tells us that is what Sam's his core campaign goal is. Like, aside from meeting everyone and dealing with the BTs, it seems he has to get from here to here. It's a journey. It doesn't tell us about the spirit realm, but it does imply why we've seen those little bits of combat when there's people chasing him. Those seem to be the separatist groups trying to stop him from reconnecting these places. So when we get to the spirit world, I don't know, but for now we kind of have a better sense of what Norman Reedus' character is doing in this game, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, thank you so much. I'm so glad you got a chance to check out what they're showing at Gamescom, and Gamescom only, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like well, right now they haven't talked about releasing this trailer anywhere else.
Yeah, so thank you so much for checking it out for us. Guys, for more on all things Death Stranding, keep it right here with us at IGN at Gamescom 2019.
Reggie Fils-Aimé is retiring.
Eagle-eyed fans are combing through every last frame.
I came prepared.
Oh.
Stay right here on IGN.
And keep it locked to IGN.
IGN Now. New news that's new to you.
Introducing the all-new Up It News!
Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up at noon, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got him.
Whoa. Yes, yes, yes.
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom Now. I'm joined by Marcus Lado to talk about Disintegration, which you just announced. Technically an FPS. What is it? Tell us.
Technically an FPS, but with a blend of real-time tactics built into it in a way that's never been done before.
Yeah, I'll say. So kind of the very interesting element right off the bat is the grav bike. How does that affect the gameplay, and are you on that thing the whole time?
So yeah, we actually started out as a real-time tactics game completely. So it was fairly cool at that time, but we decided we wanted to do something completely different. We turned that camera in the sky into what we call a grav cycle. It's a vehicle that you pilot around. You have omnidirectional control. We're allowing the player to have onboard weaponry for offensive and defensive weapons. And then we had to invent this completely different way to engage and interact with the units on the ground.
Let's talk about the grav cycle narratively and what does it mean. Is it kind of like a status symbol, or
the grav cycle itself? It's kind of fictionally, it's a vehicle that was initially used for utility and that kind of thing in the future, for being able to use for construction sites and for search and rescue operations and that kind of thing. But eventually, it was converted and weaponized into a vehicle that could be modified for combat.
It sounds resistance-y to me, but we'll get into that narrative later.
That's a good point.
Let's talk about, we were talking about the strategy, and I think that is a really good segue into the AI companions and the squad. Yep. Tell me about the squad, how you control it, and how you control it effectively in this FPS-esque game.
Yeah, it's cool. So, so we wanted, as a first-person shooter, we wanted to make sure that commanding those units on the ground actually felt fluid with that first-person shooter mechanic. So we were literally firing what we call a command pulse down on the ground, which allows you to tell units where to move within a battle space. It also allows you to priority target enemy units and or take objectives and that type of thing. Each one of the ground units also has a unique ability, so you learn how those individual archetypes can be used tactically in gameplay.
And are you triggering those unique abilities manually?
You are. So you, as the grav cycle pilot, have control over when those abilities are used and where those characters use them.
So definitely a little bit of a higher skill cap potentially than some other FPSs, but I'm sure that's going to be very contentious in the comments.
It is, well, it's intentionally a slower paced first-person shooter where there's that tactical element allows players to kind of take things at a different pace for campaign specifically. In multiplayer, things are a little bit more frenetic, and that's where you need to really understand the inner workings of your crew that you pick for multiplayer and how that's going to operate.
Jumping back to the narrative, disintegration or disintegration. I like the wordplay there. I read an article written by Joe Screbbles. You should check it out. It's on IGN.com.
I love that article.
Yeah. What is going on narratively in this game?
So in our future, this is it's kind of an allegory as to what might happen if we rely too much on technology and don't pay enough attention to what's happening around us with the world. What happens if we take one of these potential plot lines of what could happen with our future and take that to an extreme, where humanity's actually being decimated by a global pandemic, and one of the only means to survive is to actually take the human brain out and integrate that with a robotic armature. It's meant to be a temporary thing until a solution can be found to the global problems going on, and then ultimately reintegrate with a cloned body. But that's not what happens. Quickly after many of the individuals who have been integrated find out that they've got a new sense of power and skill and ability, they want to continue on with that evolutionary track and become something beyond what they were as a human. And they stratify and they break away and they go on this post-humanistic trajectory that leaves humanity behind. And not everyone agrees with that. You play a group who doesn't agree with that. They want to become human again, and they fight back, and they are sought after by the enemy forces and hunted now. So you are a small band of individuals who are like hiding under the radar from the enemy, but you're collecting forces and you're slowly growing to build this resistance that's going to fight against this enemy.
Very exciting, and that's definitely a little bit of a look at the campaign, the narrative that is driving it, but we're looking at multiplayer gameplay right now, I believe, and this is what you're showing off at Gamescom. This is, What mode is this?
So this is a one of our multiplayer game modes called Retrieval, in which it's a 2-round based 5v5 game where each player on the team has chooses a crew. Each one of our crews in multiplayer consists of a grav cycle with a pilot, a certain loadout on that grav cycle, as well as a certain mix of ground units. That comprises a crew, and each crew is themed and has a loose role in combat. So some are a light, faster grav cycle and crew with ground units that complement that. So they might have heal weapons and marksman rifle, whereas some other crews might be much bigger, beefier, like giant tank things that have onboard nukes and giant heavy mechs on the ground. So it depends on what kind of playstyle you prefer as to what kind of crew you choose.
Let's discuss the objective here, because this isn't simply TDM. I understand there are lanes, there are obviously the AI elements in the form of your squad, but is there kind of like a MOBA thing happening as well?
A little bit. In Retrieval, there are 2 different objective points that the player can choose, the team can actually choose to go and retrieve an energy core. And their goal is to go grab one of those energy cores, drive it down certain lanes, and deliver it inside enemy territory at a base. And the round starts with one of the teams either starting on offense or defense. If you're on offense, your job is to go grab those cores and deliver them. If you're on defense, your job is to keep the opposing team, of course, from delivering those cores to the platform.
All right, we've talked a lot about these squad mates, but I want to talk about the loadout of the grav cycle itself. What are we looking at in terms of archetypes of weapons, as well as gadgets, grenades, things of that nature?
So we offer a huge variety of different weapons. Some that are more effective against other grav cycles, some that are more effective against ground units. Like the one we were looking at right now, they're using onboard grenades to fire at another grav cycle at the moment, and they just got nuked out of the sky. But those weapons are also incredibly useful against ground units, like you just saw here. And then this one also has an onboard nuke, which is fantastic. So
always handy.
So it's really cool. Some of the you just see that purple bubble. That's a slow field. One of the ground units on the opposing team has an ability that they can fire off that creates a slow field that slows all projectiles and enemy units within that field. Every crew has a different flavor to it, and it's we really are spanning the gamut with things.
I think we were seeing a little bit of an emote there, a little bit of BM.
So
with the,
yeah, so we have an emote wheel allowing you to communicate both tactically with your team, so you can say, "Hey, I need help over here," but also to taunt the other players, which is always fun. But we're giving the player the ability to customize that wheel so they can put their own emotes in there and really do some fun stuff.
So what happens to your squad when they die? Let's say I'm fighting another grav cycle pilot, they destroy my squad. Are they gone until I respawn? Am I able to like call in reinforcements? How does that work?
So when they die, and they will, when they're destroyed and disintegrated, their brain cans actually like pop off and land on the ground. It's your job to go in and get those brain cans, scoop them up, and they will they'll regen and rocket back into your position.
Gotcha. Perhaps a little bit early for this discussion, but progression in terms of multiplayer. Am I unlocking additional weapons? Is there like a talent tree or something like that, or is it cosmetic?
Multiplayer is as is. There's no sense of progression within it. We do have a skill tree within the campaign, the single-player campaign, that allows you to upgrade your units and your grav cycles there, but we don't do that in multiplayer.
What level of loadout customization is there? Am I choosing between presets, or am I going into this particular archetype and kind of tinkering with it?
That's a good question. So in multiplayer, because we want to keep things balanced and in control, we are controlling the loadout of the grav cycle and the crew, and we're treating that as a single entity, the crew. So you can choose between different crews within multiplayer. We'll have 9 at ship that we'll be able to play with. But the goal is to make that kind of thing where we continue expanding upon it beyond ship. So we can have more crews, more multiplayer modes and maps and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Let's go back to talking about single player. I want to talk about the protagonist, Romer. What's his deal? We talked a little bit about his motivations, but him specifically and personally, where does he come from? So Romer is he's one of the integrated characters who escaped, and he's now outlawed by our antagonist. His name is Black Shuck. We're not talking a whole lot about him right now, but he is a pretty bad enemy. He's part of the Rayon, which is the enemy threat, which is a very large militarized organization. Now, Romer, along with a couple of others who have escaped like him, are kind of banding together. But these are normal people, like you and me. They're not genetically modified super soldiers like the Master Chief, like I made back in the Halo days. These are normal people with different personalities and really interesting connection with one another. Romer himself used to be kind of like a TV show host. And he was one of the early adopters of integration. He thought he was going to do it for ratings, and it was going to be a really cool thing for him. But everything went sideways with the rise of the Rayon enemy threat, and he was looked on unfavorably, and his career went to hell. And then he became this thing where, in order to survive, he started working with some parts of the enemy forces, but he didn't like what he was doing with his life, and he started fighting back from that, but he was imprisoned as a result. And our game kind of picks up at the beginning of Romer, as well as some of the other characters escaping from that location and then trying to make a living from that point forward. Sounds like he has a very holistic view on what's happening with integration. Can you talk to me about the campaign length? Is that something you've nailed down yet, or is that still kind of in the works? It's variable, actually, dependent upon the skill level of the player, of course, and the difficulty on which you play, but we're generally looking at between a 12 and 15-hour campaign. Gotcha. So we're fighting other grav cycles as well as AI squad mates and the enemies in multiplayer. What is the enemy variety like? In single player, is it basically the same, or are we getting the kitchen sink thrown at us in terms of variety? It's kind of the kitchen sink. So there's a lot of different things. Now, I have to remind you that our team at V1 Interactive is a 30-person team. It's not very big. But that said, we're really efficient with the kind of game we're building. We're trying to build it within scope. But there are several different enemy types in single-player campaign that you'll never see in multiplayer. A variety of different sizes of ground units, as well as lots of different aerial units. So making things very interesting for you. Gotcha. Would you define this as a game as a service or more of a conventional release? I know it's actually a very conventional approach. It's a $50 or $49.99 premium title is the way we're looking at it, because we want to make sure that single-player campaign and that multiplayer component together are of that commensurate value. Gotcha. Any chance for co-op PvE at launch or potentially afterwards? Those are awesome features that we're excited about that you might find their way in later. All right. My final question is going to be a very contentious one. Talking to the co-creator of Halo about controller versus mouse and keyboard. I'm a PC player. Can I play this on mouse and keyboard and get a great experience out of it? You can. We are developing it for the Xbox, PlayStation 4, and the mouse and keyboard on the PC, of course. It can be played across all of those platforms. That's really exciting, Marcus. Thank you so much. That was a look at disintegration, but don't go anywhere. There's lots more Gamescom right after this.
Well, hello there. Max here. We're at the Cosplay Village. This is IGN at Gamescom now. The Cosplay Village is a considerably impressive village, and there's actually a life-size X-Wing right here. Brian, what are you doing in that X-Wing?
I'm flying an X-Wing! Look at this! This is a replica scale resistance fighter. It has an entire cockpit with lights. There's a beautiful photo of Princess Leia, who's my high school crush. There's a camera where you can see everything going on in the convention. I feel like a real hero, a real fighter. I'm a real star fighter. I'm ready to fight in space and beat up Darth Vader and Kylo Ren.
Brian, we cover conventions all the time. There's nothing like this stateside. I feel like we never see gigantic set pieces alongside cosplay areas.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. This is the best thing in the world. This is basically a giant fighter. We can get in it. You can hang out. It's a really good time. Max, there's no room in here for you.
You got to get out of there. I want to get in there.
Also, they don't let the Jedi fly in here.
You will get out of there.
I'm not getting out of here.
You will get out of there.
Why don't you tell them about how big this thing is?
No, it's huge. Look at it. Look at the size of this thing. It's massive. And also, there's like a whole rack of costumes you can just put on. This is nuts. They got an area over there for gangsters, like casino people, and then I don't know. There's like a World War II area. You can dress up like elves. I feel like American conventions, they just kind of people just are cosplayers there, and they show up and they bring their own stuff. And here, there's like a whole almost like theme park angle to it. You will get out of there.
I'm not getting out.
I want to get in there. I want to get in there.
Look, there's a life-size BB unit up here. It's amazing. There's all this space. You're going to be too big. You're going to crush it. You're going to break it with your big ass.
You can't. Anyway, we need to talk.
We're not going to talk.
We will talk.
No, you can't talk to me.
That
doesn't work in here.
Get out of it.
It doesn't
we
work
got
in
lots
here.
more
It doesn't
we got lots
in
more
here.
IGN and GameStop now coming up in just a little bit.
Star Wars.
You will get out of there.
This is the life-size X-Wing.
Get out of the X-Wing.
I don't want to get out of the X-Wing. This is my favorite place in the world. Thanks for watching. Star Wars.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got
Yes.
Hey, Nick, did you hear about the new Marvel news?
No, what happened? What happened? Hey, what happened? Tell me.
Has this ever happened to you? Good news! It doesn't have to! The Daily Fix is here every day with a concentrated dose of all that gaming, movie, TV, streaming, internet, and puppy news you need to survive the work week. All right, so puppy news isn't on it yet, but I'm working on it. Roll the thing!
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom Now. Joining me to discuss the Eternal Cylinder is Carlos Bordeaux of Ace Team. I got a chance to check this game out a little bit earlier today, and like your previous work, Xenoclash is very visually distinct. So for folks at home, tell us, what is the Eternal Cylinder?
The Eternal Cylinder is like this survival game, but I don't want to throw you off too much with the concept of survival because it's very different. This is not a game where you're going to be chopping trees to gather resources and get some wood to build maybe a house, or it's a game about family, finding other little creatures and growing your family and finding mutations like by eating stuff which allow you to have these additional powers, which and growing this family and having this adventure in this really surreal world. I think we've gone maybe beyond Xenoclash in terms of the strangeness.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far just yet. I was talking about that game earlier, and it's like a fever dream for me going.
Yeah, it is.
I remember it. So there's a titular element here, which is the Eternal Cylinder, which maybe we'll see, and I mean you'll know it when you see it. It's a little bit like the Never-Ending Story in the sense that it's just destroying absolutely everything in its path. We can see it dynamically breaking some stuff. There. Tell me about this protagonist.
So the Trebum are like the protagonists of the game. You get to play not only with one. That's the starting portion where you're basically learning the basics of the game. You're born into this world with this one single creature born out of an egg. The cylinder's just coming and destroying everything, crushing everything in the world. But the Trebum are a group of several little creatures scattered around in this world, and they're born into this very hostile environment where there's predators, where there's other creatures, and there's this big mystery about where this cataclysmic event that the cylinder is. I don't want to spoil the origins or anything, but that is a thing that we're incorporating into the game. A story, it has survival games, you don't necessarily in all of them see like deep storylines, and we're trying to do a little bit of that for this title.
Yeah, I think with survival games, it's generally like emergent trying to make your own story, but I noticed there are very, very interestingly narrative bits kind of scattered into what is otherwise a procedurally generated world. So what we're seeing right now is an introduction that you handcrafted, but if you were to advance maybe 15 minutes from this, that would be procedurally generated, is that correct?
It's not entirely procedurally generated. It's still handcrafted mixed with procedural generation. We have like these segments of environments which we load into the game. So definitely each player gets to have their own experience, but we have like this artistry in the studio. We like doing our sort of handcrafted crafted environments. So for instance, all the creatures are modeled to be their own thing, with their own behaviors, with their own designs. They work and behave in a way that isn't a part like of a procedural generation of creatures. Yeah, that's a little bit the...
So we just saw the Trebum here have his first mutation. There was an egg that came by, he ingested it, and that caused him to mutate and sprout these legs that were able to have him jump over an otherwise insurmountable obstacle. Tell us about other mutations, tell us about the concept of progression, how it affects the family and what it's able to do.
Yeah, sure. So the Trebum, one of the core design aspects of the game is basically this notion that you are what you eat. So basically, at the beginning there in the tutorial, you're in this ditch, you can't jump out, you're just this little baby creature just born, and you need to get out with just jumping a little bit higher. So these jumping creatures, which you jump in, one lays an egg right there in the middle, you can grab it, you eat it, and you mutate, and bam, you get these hopper legs. You can acquire several types of different mutations which will change your body types, your eye types, your trunk, and they stack on. Like you can have a creature, for instance, that has very mutated set of eyes or a mutated trunk, as well as legs, and this really brings to the game a lot of options. You can explore areas because of the certain mutations. For instance, you would go into this cold area and you cannot explore it because you're too cold, but you grow a layer of fur, so then you're warm, and then you can investigate that area.
Right. And it's not like you said several. I think several is an understatement. From at least from what you showed me, there's a lot, and these elements in the environment aren't necessarily directly pointed out to you. Like sometimes you can go and explore things and be like, oh, this will mutate me. But I want to focus now on the cylinder because it is now glowing red hot, rolling towards our Trebum here. What does this mean? How do we stop it? How do we get away from it?
Sure. So the game, at the beginning when we were working on the game, we had the cylinder constantly moving slowly in the environment. The people who will remember the 2015 sort of prototype that we had on YouTube on video, that was how it felt. But in the game, we wanted to have moments in which you pause the cylinder. So we have these anchor towers, which you have to activate to stop the cylinder. So the cylinder will go into this glowing red berserk mode. So it starts moving really fast, sort of mowing down the entire environment. So you have to reach these anchor towers, which have this like activation trigger at the bottom. And with that, you're able to sort of make sure the cylinder stops. Then you have areas in which you can safely explore, and you're not pressured by the cylinder, which needs to be constantly moving. We will have slow movement cylinder, also the cylinder moving fast. We want to have like a variety of of gameplay.
From what I played of it, it definitely felt, at least in the beginning, that there were these segments that kind of, once you advance past a certain point, you have to sprint, and everything that you just explored is now destroyed. And I think there's something really interesting narratively about that. I haven't seen this mutation. What is this, and can you talk about some of the enemy varieties?
Yeah, sure. In that case, since it's a survival game, this is a body type that's like a blender sort of thing. It basically is the objects that you're eating, like the fruits and vegetables. It's processing them inside and generating a type of organic currency. So, like in the game, we have to think everything different. So you're not building things with wood. You're basically all the things that you're creating, you have to do it for this nomadic herd of little creatures. At this point, he's already gathered, he's with a buddy, so you're traveling in a group of 2, but you're going to start slowly growing your family, and you can apply these different mutations to the different creatures.
Gotcha. Talk to me about why it's important to have more than one Trebum in your party. Can you control multiple ones, and is there some kind of team play eventually?
Sure. You can switch between them. So you basically you're assigning the leader, and the other ones will follow. And it's interesting because even though you can stack mutations on top of other mutations, there's a limit. For instance, if you have a specific trunk mutation, you acquire another trunk mutation, it will swap out one for the other.
Gotcha.
So having more Trebum means that you have more options to have different powers at the same time. It also, they do cooperate in certain situations. For instance, you can shoot water with a hose,
like an elephant,
spout like an elephant, and when you have several Trebum, they will help you out. They will,
Oh, really?
Yeah, they will shoot all at the same time. So for instance, certain predators that are bothered by water, you can just spray them all together, and it makes it much more easy to fend them off.
So we just saw a great example of how these mutations affect where you're able to explore, how you're able to interact with the environment. The Trebum were freezing to death, and this one was able to develop fur from something that it ate. What was interesting to me playing the demo was what you could eat, what you could not eat, what I was kind of driven to. How do you make those design choices? How do you facilitate players and kind of guide them to the right thing for them to be interacting with?
So in some cases, it's more obvious. We try to make it like a visual connection from what you're eating to what you were obtaining. Some cases, it isn't as obvious, and we enclose the player in a restricted area where the mutation is part of the puzzle that's being solved. So there is, for instance, if you remember from the trailer, the Trebum would go, there was a square-shaped one that would go through a door which opened up. So that's inside this cave area, which is enclosed. You have the player in a controlled environment. So yeah, here for instance, an example where he's running around with several of his siblings, and you can get quite a large group.
Is there a maximum party size?
We still haven't defined that. We're actually still toying around with some of the design aspects of the game. This is still early. It's pre-alpha, so there's some aspects of the gameplay that we're still a little bit playing around with, and the party size is one of them.
So tell me about the enemies, starting with kind of the natural enemies, the enemies that are meant to exist in this world.
So for this game, we're creating an entirely alien fauna. So we have animals of all different sizes. We have like these gargantuan, huge sort of, we call them like, I'm using developer names because the actual names are super difficult to pronounce. But like these vacuum giraffes, like these huge giant monsters, so they have these mouths that open up and that they can sort of vacuum like these sandstorms. To these really small creatures like these little balls that roll around. Like we're trying to have like a really big diversity of animals. They're all custom built for the different environments in the game. We have like an ice biome, we have a desert biome. It's not desert, it's a real desert. You arrive there and you're going to notice that it's not like an
I think anything you describe in this game can be described as surreal.
Yeah.
It just goes without saying that it, and speaking of, the enemy design is so out of this world. I just wonder, where do you draw this inspiration from?
Whoa, I mean, we have in the studio, Andres, Edmundo, and I, the three brothers, the co-founders, we have like a, we all like a lot surrealism. We were maybe, we're from a home where my dad would leave books of Salvador Dali, Hieronymus Bosch, and painters. Also, the very early years of the video game industry in the 1980s, you would see some really strange stuff. So basically, I would say it's our love for those unconventional art styles that are maybe not that represented these days in
I would
normal,
say so.
Yeah.
Certainly. What's happening here is we talked about that square. Yeah, and it's coming back, and this is an example of a more handcrafted element that's implanted into the world. So what's happening in this kind of
fusion? So as the structure of the game will be such as that you have some areas of the game which are handcrafted for specific missions and with specific objectives, and those are like hubs that will be interconnected by this open world, procedurally generated sort of survival gameplay where you're moving around from one place to the other, discovering mutations, growing your family, finding other Trebum. But we do really feel that we need to add like these special events, and one of the strong reasons we're doing it is because the game has a story. This is not it has chapters, it has an antagonist, there is a reason why this is all happening, and we want to progress the player through that story of discovery of what's going on, what's happening to this world, in a way that exploration is not just for the sake of exploration itself and discovery, which can be really exciting. Survival games are really exciting to explore, but we also want the narrative aspect that we've done for other titles.
So I get the sense that the cylinder is not something that is necessarily organic to this world. So you see a lot of these creatures that look like they belong in this alien world. Then there are enemies that are kind of specific to the cylinder that look like they do not belong in this world. Can you tell me about those?
Okay, so the cylinder is not the cylinder by itself. It's it has these minions, these servants of the cylinder, which are some like really bizarre creatures that seem to have some resemblance to our world. So, for instance, we have this enemy which I call the Charger, which looks like a little bit like a truck with some arms, and they're really crazy because one of the things we had to do, which was differentiate the alien creatures from an alien world. So if we would have designed just simply another bizarre creature, you would go into the game and say, oh, look at that, that's just another animal from this world. So we have to set apart these servants of the cylinder as something that seems totally alien to this alien world. And that was quite a bit of a challenge in terms of design. But for those who've seen the trailer, you can see that there's some things that you say and like, this doesn't belong to that particular world. This seems to be from somewhere else.
We're running a little bit short on time, but I do want to ask about kind of gameplay mechanics and combat as it exists in this game. What are we looking at in terms of the action, the intense segments for these?
Yeah, action. I mean, this is not going to be a game where you kill a lot of stuff. The purpose is not to grow your family in order to run over the enemies.
It's not an army. Oh.
No, it's not an army.
Dang.
You're not going to shoot them or anything. But you do start acquiring mutations. For instance, you can get a trunk that shoots poison, so you sort of scare off the bigger predators. As you get a larger group, the predators start being more afraid of you, and you can avoid having them chase you. Another way is just leading them into the cylinder sometimes and having them crushed. But there's actually bosses.
Yeah,
in the game,
there were, and they're pretty intricate.
Yeah.
When can we see more of it? Do you have a release date, or when's the next time we're going to see the next chapter?
I don't know when the next time we're going to see it, but it's a 2020 release. We don't have anything more specific, but the game's pre-alpha, but we're pretty happy where we are now with the game, and super excited about showing it for the first time here.
Carlos, I got to play it, and I have to say, I thought it was something pretty special. I think it's very unique in terms of the aesthetic, in terms of the mechanics, how the gameplay is weaved into the weird emergent narrative and the titular element, the eternal cylinder. Very, very cool. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't go anywhere at home. We've got a lot more Gamescom coming right up on IGN at Gamescom now, so stick around.
Hey, what's up? It's Brian and Max for IGN at Gamescom now. Gamescom is full of brand new video games, but it's also full of weird old treasures, such as this massive display case of retro handhelds, new and old, weird, legal, illegal, bootleg, and actual, and probably a lot of stuff you forgot about.
I love this so much because it's like a museum of all of the sort of the B-side handhelds. It's like there's a few Game Boys here, but it's weirder versions like the Game Boy Light or the Game Boy Micro. I'm a huge proponent of the Game Boy Micro down here. I think that's one of the most beautiful handhelds Nintendo's ever made. The same cannot be said about the Nokia N-Gage, which was a telephone that you talked into sideways like a taco, which ran bad versions of really everything.
Yeah, that actually got a bunch of different versions. Down here we also have the Gizmondo, the Tapwave Zodiac, the Koei Pasago, which is a system I've literally never heard of.
We talk about video games for a living, and there's stuff in here that I've never heard of.
It looks like it top-loads giant, weird, angular cartridges. It's just bizarre.
It looks like the back of an airplane TV.
Yeah, it's very funny.
I'm surprised. I've never seen a Gizmondo in person before. I'm surprised at how small it was. I, for some reason, thought it was like very large. I thought it was the size of the Pasago in the back.
This looks like something they'd use in like a B-52's music video. Over here, the Neogeo X, which is honestly one of the coolest looking handhelds ever made. It's got an HDMI out and an AV out, which is awesome. You can plug it into your television. The Game Boy Light, obviously, not something that's very well known. It was a front-lit version of the Game Boy, and then we have an Astro Boy version. You might have played the Pokemon Mini, which is really cool because it's actually one of the tiniest swappable cartridge handhelds that Nintendo's ever made. Allows you to play very rudimentary Pokemon games.
Oh, back here there's the Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Right?
I had some good times with one of those at summer camp.
That played all 400 different King of Fighters games and other various fighting games.
They had an analog stick too, which was like way ahead of the curve there. Now up here, I love these so much. These, oh god, this was Tiger Electronics trying to jump on the cartridge game. I had this one. It was basically a Tiger handheld, but with swappable carts.
Yeah.
And they were kind of going for this VR thing, as you can see back here.
Now, if you remember Tiger Electronics, around the time of the Game Boy, and even predating the Game Boy, Tiger made a lot of single-use handheld games that would basically be like Street Fighter or Congo the movie.
Well, they were like just little crappy LCD animations.
And so the idea of them doing swappable carts is really interesting. The R-Zone, just like the Virtual Boy, is something that did not really take off. People were not ready for VR.
They really, like, the Virtual Boy was kind of a swing and a miss on its own. This was Tiger trying to sort of throw their hat in the ring and be like, we're making our own Virtual Boy. And it's like, you probably shouldn't do that.
Now, say, for example, you wanted a Game Boy, but your grandmother went shopping for you, and she went to Chinatown and got a bootleg by accident. Maybe she got you the wrong thing, such as the GB Boy Color, which stands for Game Boy Boy Color.
I like this a lot.
Yep, back here we have...
of course, there's the Woody GBA.
Yeah, the
Woody
Pocket.
The Pocket has wonderful curves on it, like a... I don't know, like some sort of bath products.
And then there's a Game Box, which is nestled between two real Game Boy Advance SPs, and just only looks slightly different.
The thing that threw me for a loop about the Game Boy Color is that colorway, like the Game Boy Color, came in the flat opaque neon green.
Yep.
And the Game Boy Pocket came in a neon translucent green, but neither vice versa. So that's an odd one.
Up here, maybe you wanted a Game Boy that had 3 games built into it already. Well, you should try the 3-in-1 Game King, modeled after a giant translucent Game Boy Advance with a miserable bevel that looks like a police shield.
No Game Boys, no Game Men, only Game King.
Tiger's continuing swing and a miss foray into the handheld industry.
I love this.
Went on over here with the Gamecom, which is actually the first video game handheld to have a touchscreen on it. It came with a stylus.
Yeah.
All the games were black and white.
This went on the internet. This had a modem in it. This thing was so ahead of its time. I want to call this the Dreamcast of handhelds.
Yeah.
It was really ambitious, but also kind of took some missteps there.
As you can see, it also had swappable cartridges. This got games like Duke Nukem, Resident Evil 2, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Sonic the Hedgehog, Tomb Raider.
It had M-rated games in black and white.
Yeah.
LCD.
Now, down here, in case you had giant pants such as Jinkos, you could wear big pockets, and you could hide some big-ass handhelds in them, like the Atari Lynx.
If I'm not mistaken, this thing back here, the NEC PC Engine GT, I think that's the handheld that Will Smith gets like stuck in his bag in Enemy of the State.
Yep.
Which I've never seen in person before also. It's just it's an odd rarity. This is so cool.
Yep.
Now, here's where it gets really fun. Why have Batman and Robin when you can have Batman fight Robin? This one's just weird as hell.
That one comes at a secondary controller, a tiny cartridge, and I think either a vape pen or a USB stick. You'll never know.
On earth
in the back, we got the Bandai Wonder Swan, which, once again, a legit official system. Didn't really take off, but it's got some cool games on it. Lastly, we have this display case over here, where things keep getting bigger, weirder, and more illegal. This is the Watara Supervision. Various versions of that.
Adult supervision required.
That's right. This is a big, clunky handheld.
What about Mega Duck?
Yeah, that's a good one.
You can always trust a Time-Alex.
What about the Dot Matrix LCD Gamate?
Oh boy, Cougar Boy is not a good namesake. I don't know what to make of that one.
Yeah, there's a lot going on down here. And now the Superboy down there, that's an actual system that lets you play Super Nintendo games. You can put full-on Super Nintendo cartridges in there, and even plug SNES controllers into the front of it.
This feels like a police lineup in a lot of ways. Like, some of these are legitimate, like, officially sanctioned handheld video game products. Some of them are bootleg, and some of them are recent things trying to look retro.
Now, maybe you want to be able to play games at home and on the go on your console. Well, you would love a Nintendo Switch, right? Well, how about instead a Sega Nomad?
I'm a huge Sega Nomad apologist, mostly because I don't think that many AA batteries should be released into the wild.
That's
but this was such a smart move on Sega's part, because they were finishing up sort of the console life cycle of the Sega Genesis or Master System, whatever you want to call it, and they were like, yeah, what if we just took that and put it in a smaller box? It's totally the same philosophy that the Switch has, where it's sort of double dipping on last gen's games.
Now, Max, I love that, but I've always been more of a hard-tongue Game Master guy. I love the regular D-pad on every system ever made, but what if we went crooked with this one? Well, Hartung asked that question and answered it in front of no one, because
I'm getting stressed out looking at those buttons.
Yeah, they look like they hurt.
You know what? All these other companies, they have sort of flat-faced buttons, but what if we did this?
Well, anyway, that's about 100 handhelds that you can see right here at the Retro Game booth at Gamescom. Lots of weird stuff here. Max, thank you so much for celebrating the weird legal and illegal history of handheld gaming right here at Gamescom. We've got plenty more videos coming up on IGN at Gamescom now, so don't go anywhere. Otherwise, I'll force you to play the Hard-Tongue Game Master.
We found a Gamecom at Gamescom. I love it.
Yeah.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got him.
Yes. Introducing the all-new Up It Nude! Up It Nude's new and improved recipe is chock full of lists, let's plays, unboxings, special guests, goofs, guffaws, and other content too stupid for regular weekdays.
Like some sort of color-changing reptile stripper man. I'm doing it. Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up at Noon, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom Now. Journey with us to the Savage Planet, a place full of space and terror and nonsense and edible garbage and all sorts of fun wonders that we can explore. Here to tell us more is Max Scoville and Alex Hutchinson. Let's talk about Journey to the Savage Planet.
Alex, I checked this game out at E3. It is very silly, and surprise, it also has co-op multiplayer.
Surprise.
We actually have two of your guys actually sort of over there somewhere playing live. We've got footage of that right now. Tell us a little bit about sort of what the co-op experience is like, or
yeah, like you know, personally, I've had a long history with co-op, you know, with Army of Two and then Far Cry 4, and it always seemed like a great way to sort of add, you know, a combinatoric value to the game that you're working on, and especially in this game where it's an exploration game, you've been sent to a crazy alien world. The idea of bringing along your buddy or your kid or your partner just seemed like such a perfect fit. So you can see here, you know, all the mechanics are mirrored. Both players can do everything. Fictionally, your partner is made of reconstituted meat in this, so he he comes along for the ride on and off, and you sort of boil him down into paste again when he's not there. But that's neither here nor there.
Aren't we technically made of, you know, all made of reconstituted
or
meat?
stars? I've been told stars.
Oh,
I'll go with meat.
Both.
Yeah, so like, what's the objective here? Is it just teaming up to kind of like?
Well, it's you have a core objective, which is to explore this planet. You work for Kindred Aerospace, the 4th best interstellar space exploration company. So you start here with no gear, and basically you're immediately confronted by obstacles. So you have this camera, which you probably saw before, where one player or either player can sort of take photos of the environment and scan it for details. And that can either give you lore, or it can unlock quests. So for instance, if you scanned an obstacle, like, you know, like a cunningly cracked wall, the quest might be to craft an explosive device, and then the game will give you markers in the world of where the ingredients for that would be, and then you and your friend can go out there and grab them so you can build the gear that you need.
But there's also, I mean, this is a game very much about kind of like playing around. Like it's playful, and I think, you know, you have to, you know, read the spiel of like, what are the objectives here? What are we doing? But like this kind of seems like you could jump in here with a friend and sort of race each other around and just.
Well, that's the idea. Like the quests there, like you know, on other games I've worked on, sometimes it started to feel like you were making a bunch of lists for players to check off, you know, and then your feeling at the end of the game wasn't that I had this amazing experience and that I achieved something. It was that I finished my busy work and I was done. And so we wanted to get away from that. So yes, there aren't any quests at the start of the game except sort of scan everything and go and look at anything. But we hoped that by stumbling across objectives and building them for yourself, it wouldn't feel like a list, it would feel like a decision you made in the game. And that fits that thing you're talking about of sort of goofing around and having fun with your buddy.
Yeah, you're finding something to do rather than being given something to do.
Exactly, that's
right. Now, the world and the creatures in this game are sort of grotesque and vibrant. They're sort of evocative of a lot of like 1950s sci-fi to me. What were some of the things that sort of inspired the creature designs? And
it was halfway between my love of pulp, you know, and that sort of stuff, and a desperate need to make something colorful and optimistic and bright. After making these very serious games for a long time, and even on Far Cry 4, you know, for me it was fun to have a sense of humor in it and to re-inject that into it, and so to carry on with that. And you know, in the second half is probably that I grew up, you know, on the NES and then the SNES and the Amiga 500, and these games are filled with bright, colorful worlds that were new and exciting, and I didn't know what they were, and so opening the game was kind of a, you know, like, what the hell is it experience, and so I wanted to bring that back a bit as well. And so the creatures, I didn't want them to look like, you know, like a dog or you know, anything that you would see in the real world. So you saw there's a kind of, you know, weird halfway between a security camera and kind of like a bulbous, you know, like lung, you know, and so you as a player should stop, again, scan it and say, what is it? What's the obstacle here? Is it aggressive? Can I just avoid it? What should I do? So trying to get that vibe back in the game.
Yeah, I love that little thing.
So sort of the pulpy influences are great. When I played the demo at E3, it surprised me at how like just outright funny it is. Like you've got these like sort of like live action video bits. The writing is like really goofy. It's kind of got like a bit of Futurama in there. What were the sort of comedic influences going into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of like I think it's vague. I mean, you know, I'm Australian, so I grew up weirdly on both Australian TV, but also a lot of British TV. So I think there's a bit of sort of Faulty Towers in there, or The Young Ones, or like there's a bit of gross out humor as well that's in that. And it was fun to write it and also try and incorporate what I like to think of as sort of interactive slapstick. So again, in Far Cry, you always had these examples of, your friend on fire dying in front of you because of a Molotov cocktail you'd thrown earlier, which had attracted a bear.
Some of our favorite moments.
It is, right? And it sort of emerges from the systems that you build. And so we were trying for the same thing, to have mechanics. You have these weird objects in your left hand as a player, and hopefully they have unforeseen consequences in the environment that have horrible, impact on your partner.
Have there been like moments in developing this where a lot of those systems come together and do something that you weren't necessarily expecting?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it gets better as you go. The closer you get to finish, the more likely you are to get a hilarious result. But even now, I see like these partner shot a creature and goo hit the other guy's camera. Even like little things. It's not much. It's not a mechanic.
Yeah.
But if we do it right, hopefully we get a laugh from your buddy.
And he's eating the slime there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full of slime. It's a bit, you can't do that on television. Do you ever get that one in?
Yeah,
totally.
Say, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a show I never understood because it was just like violent adults like dumping crap on children.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
So what I love about how Alien, all the I don't even want to call it gadgets or gear because it's like a lot of it is sort of organic.
Yeah.
You look at it and you're like, I don't know what that is. What am I looking at here? What does it do?
It's been fascinating because teaching people is very tricky. You realize that we've got this sort of set of verbs that we use in video games that everyone knows, right? And whenever you deviate from that, like this is a grapple seed that the guys are using on the left, and so you find that they grow on a moss, and if you've picked them up, you can throw them on that moss and they'll grow, and then you can have them interact with your grapple the same way the ones that were pre-placed in the environment did. But getting people to understand it and to have it be organic instead of a pop-up on the screen saying use the grapple seed on the purple moss has been a challenge, but that's the fun of hopefully it being a different set of mechanics.
No, I love the grapple stuff here. You also added the grappling hook in Far Cry 4. Mm-hmm. What's the secret to getting a really like a good fun grappling hook that isn't just like a short distance teleport kind of thing?
Physics is the key. So you know what I mean? Like inertia and motion is the key to all those. So the idea that you can overshoot or undershoot, or you can play with it and launch yourself. I think that's the fun. I always go back to like those early Halo videos where they realized they could blow the warthogs over things. You remember those?
Oh,
Really early videos came out of that. Things are the birth of sort of gamer clips basically. Oh, yeah. And I think that's all connected. So the same with a grapple. If you can launch yourself, then it's great.
To focus on what we just saw there, the player threw a can of, what is it? Grob?
It's grob, which is your universal space food, but it's basically an edible. And what you do with it is you can use it as bait. So other creatures will eat it and they'll poop out resources, or you can use them to move them around the environment and beat them up.
But it seemed like a bunch of the other creatures attacked that one creature.
Yeah, because once you put grob on the creature, then he becomes food.
That's so
then you got that.
I feel like there's this sort of like childlike naivety to like exploring a world like this and just grabbing random fruits off of a tree and eating them. And,
I like it. That was that pulpy quality, you know what I mean? Like that we're going out there for adventure and everything's going to work. And you're like, no, you're not going to be able to breathe and you're going to live on a rock eating poop mushrooms like Matt Damon in The Martian. That's what's really going to happen. Yep. But in our fantasies, hopefully it's a bit more like this. There you go. There's an ad. Oh, no, this is an ad for Meat Buddy.
So there's live action elements in this, which I really love. I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of. Like there's moments like that in WALL-E. It's sort of just like, this is a weird sort of happy dystopian future, but there's also an actual video in this game.
Yeah, we thought we were being really original, and then we were making them, and someone went, "Oh, like in WALL-E," and you're like, "Oh, that's right, damn it!" You know what I mean?
Well, it's definitely something you don't see a ton of in video games specifically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the real thing for us is that, it's an indie game. There's only 25 of us making the game. It's not even a full price, title when it comes out. And it's just that we didn't have the money to do CG. Like we had to do. It was cheaper to hire actors and put fake ads in and put cinematics in.
It's so funny to go full circle like that because I feel like when cutscenes were introduced, it was because game media couldn't support video.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, full motion video, we can't afford that. Now it's like, we can't afford cutscenes. We're going to make a video.
Yeah, just make a movie. Yeah. Exactly.
What was it like as like a game studio to get together and make short films to put in a game?
It was a lot of fun because you forget that you always confronted by the idea that in a video game, the technical difficulties are in the way of, the making it fun.
Right.
And you have all these things to overcome, the renderer, animation systems, like gameplay systems interlocking. And so just shooting a video, you're like, this is great. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the script needs to be good, the performances need to be good, but it's much more controllable. You have challenges on the creative side and not the technical side as well.
It's a lot harder for like an actor to clip through an environment.
Yes, exactly. And also, once it's done, and you don't change the lighting system and then rewatch cutscenes you finished a year ago and go, it's completely black, Jimmy. Why is it completely black?
Oh man. So one thing that's always fascinated me about the role of comedy in games is, comedy, if you repeat a joke too many times, it kind of breaks it, and that also kind of flies in the face of QA testing a game. How do you keep the game funny and fresh while also kind of like replaying it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like any joke that's verbal or that's based on words, you can only tell once. Right, and it has to be like parked and taken. You heard it, you chuckled, and you moved on. But all the physical jokes you can tell over and over again. Someone falling down, it's the funniest home video, right? It's the same joke every week, and it's still funny. Watching someone
it'll be funny forever.
Yeah, right. Being struck in the nuts by something, however it happens, is hilarious. So getting the same sort of thing here, where like booting those creatures. I remember you tweeting about it. Booting the little puffer birds is always funny.
I don't know if they can hear us. I hope they start kicking the little guys.
We need to kick some stuff.
But no, that's an interesting point. Like if you insert physics in there, it's basically procedurally generated slapstick.
Yes.
Because it's going to do something different, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And then where it bounces, or like Ragdoll is funny forever in games. You know what I mean? Seeing things fall and collapse.
And so this is sort of like not necessarily a linear experience, but like it has a start and finish, right?
It does. It has a shape. We were joking too that it's a game for old people. Like whenever I hear now that it's for us. That it's 1,000 hours long, a part of me dies inside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I got 2 kids, I've got a life I want to continue to have, and so 1,000 hours is way too much. So we thought also we can't afford to make it, but 10 to 12 hours of bespoke content, hand built, is great. And so that's it. It does have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you can tackle various things in various orders. But yes, the content is finite.
And it's not like a checklist of things to do.
No, it's like you build your own checklist.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah,
Alex,
wonderful to hear.
When can people play this game?
So it's January 28th stateside, and I think it's the 31st here, but it's between those 3 days.
Awesome.
It's a good weekend.
But it's coming out early next year. So we're finishing it up. It's about alpha at the moment, so we're grinding away. I was watching people play down in the business center and just making bug lists, sending them to my producer back home. Every 5 minutes his phone was just lighting up. But we've got a lot of polish to do, but the core of it's there, and we're excited for people to get their hands on it.
Is it cool to just be at a big trade show like this and see people just running around this world just like messing it up?
It's really cool and mildly terrifying too, because you realize how long everyone on the dev team has been playing it, and you're like, how many of, say, the jumps are relatively tight, and so seeing people die, I'm like, you make it easier. The game's meant to be funny, and dying and failing a lot isn't funny. So
no, not at all. But getting struck in the nuts will always be funny. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Journey to the Savage Planet. If you want even more weird, bizarre nightmare creatures interacting with each other in a comedic manner, you should watch the upcoming interview we have with Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair coming up right here on IGN at Gamescom now. So don't go anywhere.
We're at Gamescom's Cosplay Village, where our shared love of video games and the characters in it is on full display. Why don't we go check out what they've got going on and see if we can find any cool cosplays. I'm here with the Witch King of Angmar. Now tell us about your cosplay.
I've built this cosplay in, I guess, 5 years ago, and I've been here every year since, and always had to fix and repair and everything. So there is not really something to point out specially, because it's so much work, and it's still my only cosplay. And I'm really happy to stay here and be at Gamescom, because I'm meeting so many old friends and new friends. It's really awesome here.
How long did it take you to make your cosplay?
Like I said, it's really hard to determine, but I guess it's more than 100 hours.
Wow, what was your inspiration to choose this character?
I really liked the films and the books, and so there was, after I've seen Lord of the Rings like 10 times, I had to build this costume.
Yeah, you wanted to be the bad guy?
Yeah, it's easier, because you don't have to look after Maurits or some hindrance like that.
Cosplay Village is, of course, armed with its own hospital, which, if you didn't know, is the word cosplay and hospital put together. It's an awesome area where folks can repair any damage done to their cosplays. They even have an artist alley where you can bring your art and sell it, and live creating where people are drawing and painting right before your very eyes. Alrighty, Cloud, you look great. Tell us about your cosplay.
Well, that's like my favorite cosplay all time. That's like every cosplay I made was just to make Cloud someday. So, yeah.
How long did it take you to make it?
Completely? A couple of months. Like I work full time, so I have to do this beside my job. Yeah, a couple of months.
So just a pure passion project. Tell us how you made this sword.
The sword is actually, it's really light, and it's mostly made of foam, like from the general store, and it's like 2 weeks worth of work, and yeah, I can carry it easy in one hand.
No, he can carry it easy because you're so strong because you're Cloud, right?
Yeah, of course.
Not because it's foam.
Well.
We have a fan-made X-Wing that I can only imagine is 2-scale. You can even take photos in it. And then over here, we've got a Mos Eisley facade. Again, all of this is fan-made. It is so incredible. And we have a droid. We've got K2SO, and clearly the Rebel Alliance is hanging out here. We even have Salacious Crumb. So that is the Cosplay Village here at Gamescom, and we have so much more Gamescom coming at you. Stick around.
Hey, Nick, did you hear about the new Marvel news?
No, what happened? What happened? Hey, what happened? Tell me.
Has this ever happened to you? Good news! It doesn't have to! The Daily Fix is here every day with a concentrated dose of all that gaming, movie, TV, streaming, internet, and puppy news you need to survive the work week. All right, so puppy news isn't on it yet, but I'm working on it. Roll the thing!
Reggie Fils-Aimé is retiring.
Eagle-eyed fans are combing through every last frame.
I can't prepare.
Oh.
Stay right here on IGN.
And keep it locked to IGN.
IGN Now. New news that's new to you.
Introducing the all-new Up-It News.
Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up-It Noon. Weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Hey, what's up? It's Brian Altano here at IGN at Gamescom Now. The Gamescom show floor is absolutely massive and packed with treasures, including here at the retro area, which is Hall 10-2, this amazing display case of 30 years of Game Boy goodness. The Game Boy just turned 30 years old, and so let's celebrate it, because this case is packed with treasures. Up here we have the Game Boy Pocket, which was the one of the smaller iterations of the original Game Boy design. The original's back there, as you can see. It's got the big fat buttons on it. It took 4 giant AA batteries. It had a red light to indicate that the batteries were on, which we now know to mean the battery's about to die, so things change. This is F1 Race. It was the first game to use the 4-player adapter, which actually let you daisy chain 4 Game Boys together to do a racing game, which wasn't very fun, but it was really novel and interesting. The iconic packaging for the Game Boy in the background, that's actually the North American packaging, but we did get to see it in other regions as well. It has those awesome like laser graphic hologram fingers in the back. Here's the Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer, which let you take photos and then print them on sticker paper. This is a really novel thing to have a handheld portable printing system that actually worked better than probably the system or the printer you had at home at the time, because those are notoriously terrible to use. Down here, we start to get into the games, some of my favorite of all time, including Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. We have the European box art, the Japanese box art for the color version, and the Japanese box art for the original version. In America, it was called DX, and same with overseas. That's when they added a color dungeon and other colors for the Game Boy Color release. This box art's absolutely beautiful. And this is paired with the Super Game Boy, which allowed you to play Game Boy games on your television for the very first time. We were so used to seeing Game Boy games this big on tiny little puke green screens. So finally playing those on your full screen and being able to color swap on them and add borders was one of the coolest things in the world. Over here, Donkey Kong, otherwise known as Donkey Kong 94. I will say straight up the best Donkey Kong game ever made. Super Mario Land, not the best Mario game ever made, but a really novel and interesting one. It let you jump on turtles and they blew up. Also, you could shoot fireballs and they ricocheted, which is super weird. You can try that out in Mario Maker 2. In the back, Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins, was the first time we ever got to see Wario in a video game, and he's still gross and horrible. That game rules. Pokemon, small game, you've probably heard of it, only took the world by storm for decades, and it's still one of the most popular things in the world. We're getting a brand new Pokemon game on Switch this year, and that's going to be a big deal. Down here, the only way to carry your Game Boy anywhere in style was with a giant pink fanny pack, or that weird pouch in the back. I didn't actually wear either of these things, but if you did, that's okay. I don't judge you. Maybe you got beat up in school over it, but so did I, but for completely unrelated things. Down here, Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly. Game Boy's awesome. The Simpsons are awesome. Surely the game must be good, right? No. No. It's very, very, very bad. But I played it a lot because I didn't know better. Childhood. Tetris. One of the best-selling games ever made. This is the game that you saw business people on airplanes playing, in suits. This normalized video games for us, like hardcore nerds, to all of a sudden walk around the world and see Tetris everywhere. People were playing video games everywhere. Adults, like respectable adults with ties. It's crazy. How do they let us do what we do? Down here, we have a bunch of strategy guides, including this one, which I want to break the glass and steal because I actually collect Link's Awakening strategy guides because I'm insane. And this is the German version of that has some of the best original art in the world. It's super rare. It's on eBay. If you have an extra copy at home, hit me up, DM me. We can trade addresses. I'll buy it off you. Give me a good deal. I really need it. Right here, this is the DX strategy guide that came out in Japan. Actually, no, that's the manga. I have that as well. So this basically tells the illustrated story of Link's Awakening, which is getting a remake on September 20th on Nintendo Switch this year. Over here, this is the Japanese strategy guide, which is all black and white and really cool. Back there, a giant deformed-headed child tells you how to play Game Boy. That's definitely incredibly, ridiculously unofficial, so don't trust it. In the corner, this is the Super Game Boy strategy guide. You probably wonder why a peripheral needed a strategy guide. Well, a lot of people were playing those games for the very first time on the Super Game Boy. It also showed you the best colors to pick for each game. So if you want to play Zelda, you could play it like that and maybe change the entire world to be green or blue. If you want it to be weird, it's all red and there's blood trees everywhere. It's terrifying. And down here, this is the Mogul Power 2002 for Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. More cheats. Once again, ridiculously unofficial and probably illegal. But that is 30 years of Game Boy goodness in one glass case. It's super cool. Happy birthday to the Game Boy. One of my favorite systems of all time. I really, really hope Nintendo makes a Game Boy Classic, like a tiny one with a bunch of games on it. But in the meantime, I'll take a Switch Lite and Link's Awakening coming September 20th. We've got plenty more retro coverage here at IGN Gamescom now, so don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? I'm Sydney Goodman, and I'm here with none other than Jeff Keighley.
You the delivery dude? Oh, that's a relief. I've just about given up on you.
All right, so let's start at the top.
Yep.
Death Stranding. It's all the internet can talk about. Obviously, Kojima premiered some pretty incredible stuff on Opening Night Live.
I know.
Let's start. You're in the game, dude.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, is it crazy to you, or are you just kind of like, whatever?
No,
it's
it's kind of nuts. I mean, maybe you're in the game too.
That would definitely be a surprise. Maybe some like Game Awards footage.
Yeah, you never know, Kojima. He scammed me a couple years ago in San Diego. I had no idea what for. He's just like, Jeff, come down. I want you to see the process of how we scam people. So I was there the same day as Nicholas Wind and Refn, the director, and we both got scanned. And I had no idea what he was going to do with it. And he didn't tell me until like a week or two ago. He's like, oh, you're kind of in the game.
Oh, so he didn't just randomly send you an email that was like game footage?
No, I had no idea. And it was like, I saw him at Comic-Con. He sort of talked about like, oh, I have this idea of how I'm going to use you in the game. And then when I saw the footage last week, I'm like, okay, that's cool, because it wasn't my voice. And actually at Comic-Con, I ran into Matthew Mercer, who's the voice of Jeff Keighley in the game. I don't want to be weird, but I feel you and I might have like a connection or something. And he came up to me and he's like, oh, by the way, like I play you. And I had no idea. And I was like, really? And then Kojima was there too. He's like, he's just laughing in the corner. He's like, oh, maybe. So yeah, it's like Kojima, you never know what to expect, but I trust him implicitly. And it's like, I don't even know, like, can you go back to me throughout the game multiple times? Do I have other things I do?
So you have like basically next to no context on your character.
No knowledge.
Have you actually gotten to play the game at all?
I have played a little Death Stranding.
Oh!
I have, yes.
Wink at the camera.
Yeah. It's pretty
cool. To give your rating. The number of winks will be our
I mean, I only played like a very small piece of it. The thing with that game is that I think he's really trying to do something different with it. And I think when people see footage, just like, you know, we're all trying to piece together like what he's working on and how does this all make sense. We're like, you know, Norman Reedus is peeing, like what does that mean? And how does this all fit together? But what I will say I think about the game is that what he's doing with the online aspects of it, I think people aren't quite fully ready for what he's sort of doing. And if you remember, even in Opening Night Live, he talked a lot about how people like, you know, everyone can like pee on the mushroom and it'll grow bigger. And it's like, I mean, it's silly and funny, but you got to take that concept and think about how that applies to everything you do in the game in this sort of connected world of connecting people. So people are like, you know, he loves to talk about these things and people are like, oh, that's so silly, crazy Kojima, but think about that, how that applies to everything you're doing in the game and what's going to happen. And again, I think he's building something that is, it's not just a single player game, there's sort of these online components. I think he'll eventually talk about more of that, but I'm really excited for people to kind of realize what's in the game. And again, I don't even fully understand it because there's so much to it, but you know, he's operating at such a different level with like rocking the baby and all this other craziness.
Totally.
I'm like, we'll see.
Well, and I think it's something that we're all trying to figure it out in the context of games we've played before.
Exactly.
And mechanics that we currently understand. So I think any time there's something new introduced, we're probably all very off base.
No, that's a great point, because I think people like always want to say like, oh, it's just like Metal Gear, or it's just like Journey, or you know, people like, oh, it's just a walking simulator, et cetera, and it's like, you know, people have seen Kombat in some of the trailers, and there's elements there, and I think he's really going to take you on, I think, a crazy journey that is like completely unpredictable, and you know, every time he shows something, you don't know what to expect. And think of how many games you play where you see one level and you're like, I've kind of seen the whole game.
Yeah.
And it's like the story might be different, the enemies might be a little harder, the art might be a little different. But this game, like every time he shows something, it's like out there. I mean, even the cutscenes he showed, it's like the
it's
bridge
like such
baby
a
and all
you think
that.
You're understanding, and you're not.
Yeah. But again, like you just have to sort of trust him or don't trust him. But I'm really excited about, you know, it being so different. As you said, it's not just another third-person action game, which is kind of what we need in this industry, is people kind of pushing in different directions, doing different styles of games.
You must understand, there is still a great deal we don't know about BBs. As we expand the chiral network and recover more past data, perhaps we'll find our answers.
Reggie Fils-Aimé is retiring.
Eagle-eyed fans are combing through every last frame.
I came prepared.
Oh.
Stay right here on IGN.
And keep it locked to IGN.
IGN Now. New news that's new to you.
Introducing the all-new Up-It News!
Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up-It Noon, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got him.
Yeah. Whoa. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom. Now, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is the exciting new Yooka-Laylee game that I cannot wait to play. Here is Harry Robinson to tell me more, and the Laylee to my Yuka, Max Scoville.
Sounds sort of right. Yeah.
You're the right color.
Harry, thank you so much for coming. I'm incredibly excited about this game.
Me.
The last Yooka-Laylee game, I think, was, you know, a absolutely beloved, Kickstarter success. I would say darling is the perfect word for that. Obviously evocative of classic games like Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
new game, which I think was like a total surprise for everybody.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like a complete bonus game that we weren't expecting to get, is a 2D platformer.
That's right, yeah.
So what sort of sparked that decision to begin with?
So at Playtonic, we kind of don't want to get stuck in a rut and be known for just making the same games over and over, and we didn't want to just get in that, oh, these are the 3D platformer guys. And so after Yooka, we had all sorts of things, oh, we could do this, we could do that, and we thought, 2D platformer, maybe people find that interesting, and mix it up. We definitely want to keep surprising everyone. We don't just want to keep making the same thing over and over again. So we thought, taking Yooka-Laylee, putting them in a 2D platform, and that's going to be good. And we were confident that we could do a really good job with it as well.
Now, as like a big old school 3D platforming guy, I think I've replayed Mario 64 like 50 times, 100%, gotten all 120 stars, 150 on the DS version. I love that game. And I remember during that time in the N64, to make a 2D platformer was sacrilegious. No one did it.
Yeah.
People did not do it, did not touch it. So what are the benefits to going back to something like this? Because there was a time where people were like, 2D games, that's like old school, that's garbage, we're only 3D now. And now we get to celebrate both. So what are the sort of like stylistic and gameplay benefits of going back to something that's this, sort of linear?
Well, to be honest, actually there's a significant challenge in going back to 2D, because in 3D, you can kind of get away with everything not being totally flawless. You've got this big immersive world to sort of, draw the player's attention, and there's all sorts of like characters and all sorts of things to see. But in a 2D game, there's really nowhere to hide. If your mechanics aren't really flawless, if your level design isn't great, then it becomes apparent quite clearly. And so actually, it was like, when we started on, it's like, wow, this is actually pretty tricky.
Oh, it's like everything has to be like perfectly
tight,
exactly.
Right? And particularly with the gameplay mechanics, they've got to be super responsive. And like in this game, one of the considerations was we wanted it to be 60 frames a second on every platform, so that it was as responsive as possible and really fluid. And if you like looking at the footage, you can see the person who's playing, they're pretty good at it, and they're just flowing through the level.
Yeah.
And making it feel responsive and fluid, that was took a lot of work.
No, I think a lot of people, to be reductive, are going to look at this and it's like you took the first game and just squished it,
Yeah.
Was there anything you'd sort of gotten used to in terms of game design, mechanically or sort of environmentally, that you wanted to incorporate from the first game into 2D, but just it didn't work or it didn't quite fit?
No, not really. I mean, we approached it completely differently with it being 2D. There wasn't, other than the characters and the lore and that kind of stuff, there wasn't a huge amount that you could take over wholesale. I think one of the considerations was the fact that Yooka-Laylee they were a pair for a start, and you've got to bring them in and work out, okay, well, how do we make these guys work in 2D? In a way that kind of feels like they're the same characters from the original. You can't give them totally different moves and just throw everything out of the window. So part of the thing we had to think of was, well, what do we retain that we think is critical to their moveset, and what do we think that, maybe it's not so important to have?
The last game was obviously sort of a slightly slower pace, sort of, meandering, wonderful, vibrant collectathon. You went around and at your own pace, you grabbed things and you collected them and you opened up doors. This is the kind of game that I think people are going to try to speed run.
Yeah, definitely.
Was this game designed around that? I mean, you can play this casually, but will you be able to go in here and just try to get through as fast as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. We were really aware of speedrunners, in fact, because it's called Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, because actually the Impossible Lair is a level of the game, and it's the hardest level of the game. It's about 4 times longer than any other level. It's got tons and tons of enemies from across the game in it. It's got boss fights in it. And there's no checkpoints. So it's really, really dangerous, but actually you can just go into it right from the beginning of the game. And if you're skillful enough, you can just finish the game by finishing that one level.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to play any of the rest of the game. You can just go straight into the lair. And actually in this footage, I think they're going to go into the lair to just get a sense of how difficult it is. But there's this one level that you can just go into, finish it, finish the game. So we really think that we're going to see speedrunners just blast through that and finish the game in 10 or 15 minutes.
So that's a novel approach. That feels almost like Breath of the Wild-ish.
Yeah.
You can fight Ganon, you're going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So is it just a matter of sort of kind of letting players get the feel of the game playing through other levels, or are they going to gather new skills and stuff along the way?
Yeah, so one way is that you could get good, but that's probably a little punishing for players. I think there's only one person in the office who can get through it without taking a hit. So it is really, really difficult. But it is possible, though. It's called impossible, but it's actually possible. But for mere mortals like myself, that thankfully there is another way. So the game has got all these other 2D levels in, and at the end of every 2D levels, there's a bee that's been imprisoned. And when you complete the level, you free the bee, and that bee will go into the impossible lair with you and take one hit on your behalf. So as you complete levels, you free bees. The more bees you got, the more hits you can take. The more hits you can take, the more possible the impossible lair becomes. And there's 48 in total, so that's a lot of hits you can take by the end of the game, should you complete every single level and find all of the bees.
Now, obviously, this is very evocative of, I would say, vintage, rare games, just like the last one was. A tremendous pedigree to carry that forward, obviously. And when I think of a game like that, I think of Donkey Kong Country, which had massive cartoon bosses at the end of each level. Not at every level, but each world.
Yeah, each world, yeah.
Big badgers you could beat up, and the horrible birds that would poop eggs.
Classics.
What kind of stuff have you guys thrown in terms of bosses in this game, and what was it like coming up with the ideas around them?
So actually the only boss in this game is Capital B, so you can see him here, and you fight him multiple times throughout the Impossible Lair. So the Impossible Lair is broken up into a boss fight with him, then a big chunk of incredibly difficult level, and then another boss fight which is more intense and more level, and it kind of progresses like that. So the only boss fight is Capital B, but he's still pretty intense.
So it's sort of like a Robotnik approach where he keeps coming at you, but from different angles.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate that. Musical score, another thing that you guys are totally known for. What's going on with the music this time around?
So this time we've got Dave Wise and Grant Kirkhope leading the charge on the music, although there's two guys from our studio as well who've been working closely with them, and that's been really awesome to see those guys work alongside, Dave and Grant, and just assimilate their talent.
Yep.
And yeah, the music in this game is totally awesome, and each level has two different versions of itself. So when you go into a level, you'll play it one time, and it's kind of like the normal way, and then you can do something that transforms it into a totally different version of a level. So to give you an example, you go in a level, and it's normal, then you go in again, and it's been frozen. And we have totally different music tracks for each one of those as well, so it's like real treat for the ears as you're playing the game.
Now, you guys, it seems like you're almost going backwards a little bit. You're going, 3D and now 2D. Is there any chance we're ever going to see like a pixel art version, or
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, we do have a character called Rextro, who's this kind of retro dinosaur. So I can imagine a pixel art game with him. But there's no plans right now.
Were there ever conversations about making this one like actually flat 2D?
Yeah, there were. Yeah,
really?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that we thought of that we could do with this, and different environments and worlds. There's like just so many ideas that you got to like pick the best ones, I guess.
Are you playing with the sort of depth? Like, are there background elements you can get to, or is this like a pretty straightforward?
It's pretty much straightforward 2D, but I guess one of the other interesting aspects about this game, so you've got the 2D levels, but this place that you can see here, this is called the Overworld, and you probably look at this and go, okay, I get it, it's a map screen, but actually this is much more like a mini adventure game in its own right. So there's all sorts of characters to meet and interact with, there's loads of different locations to visit, there's puzzles to solve, there's secrets to find, and a bunch of the stuff you find in this overworld you can actually bring into the 2D levels, and a bunch of the stuff you do in the overworld changes the 2D levels. So you've got this kind of nice back and forth between playing these quite intense 2D levels, and then you can imagine you play a level, then another level, you kind of eventually get a bit stressed out, your heart's going, and you want a bit of relax.
Right.
And the overworld is kind of a nice place to just, sit back and just chill out and still make progress, but just not have to deal with buzzsaws and like a trillion enemies thrown at you and that kind of thing.
Now, a lot of the levels we've seen so far have been like wildly different from each other, which again, part of your studio's pedigree, I think, is like really cool. What kind of environments can players expect to see as the game continues?
Yeah, so there's all sorts of different locations. That was one of the key things for us. We didn't want to have a sort of repeating tile sets. We wanted players to feel like they were exploring this genuine world. So there's all sorts of locations. There's towns, as you can see here. There's a factory. There's even like blimps up in the sky. There's like countrysides. There's lots of like really idyllic and beautiful and colourful locations. And even as you can see in like a terrifying factory like this, we still try and have it as vibrant and colourful as possible because it's it's a Yooka-Laylee game. That's one of the cool things about working on a game like this. It's like getting to make these crazy, colourful, vibrant worlds. It's just really awesome.
No, it's so much fun seeing you guys get creative and really, like you said, just kind of not get stuck in a rut. If you personally could take another sort of genre of game design to put Yooka-Laylee into, what would you do?
What would I do? Another genre.
Turn-based, first-person,
Western.
Yeah, first-person shooter. That'd be good, wouldn't it? I mean, if you look at Banjo-Kazooie, they did that in the past, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So that would work, but I don't know.
You're not on the hook for it or anything, I was just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, a kart race would be pretty cool, but definitely no promises.
Yeah, that'd be a good fit. Now, obviously, this is sort of a hard question when you have the last boss of the game immediately accessible. What's the sort of average play length you're seeing?
Yeah, it's kind of tricky to sort of answer that, but I say if you think of like an average player just going through it, an average player at a sensible pace, I don't know, say maybe 20 hours worth of content, and then if you wanted to find everything, perhaps 30, something like that.
Cool.
Nice.
Final question, when can people play this?
So they can play it in October of this year.
That makes me so happy. That's
I know.
so soon.
We're really excited, I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, a game I cannot wait to play. We have plenty more games coming up right here on IGN at Gamescom now, so don't go anywhere.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got
Yes. Hey, Nick, did you hear about the new Marvel news?
No, what happened? What happened? Hey, what happened? Tell me.
Has this ever happened to you? Good news! It doesn't have to! The Daily Fix is here every day with a concentrated dose of all that gaming, movie, TV, streaming, internet, and puppy news you need to survive the work week. All right, so puppy news isn't on it yet, but I'm working on it. Roll the thing!
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom now. Do you like animals? Of course you do. They're wonderful. Would you like to own a zoo? Of course you do. Well, you sort of can in a video game called Planet Zoo. Here to tell us about it, we've got Bo and Matt from Frontier, and here are my fellow animal enthusiasts, Brian Altano. Hi. Let's put on our animal hats.
Ooh, this is great.
Oh, we get to be brother and sister, look.
This is awesome.
So, Planet Zoo is kind of the spiritual successor to the Zoo Tycoon series, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And this is a thing that a whole lot of people have a ton of nostalgia for. It's really beloved. We've been like right next to your booth, and it's just like charming and endearing. You're rolling like animal footage, which is like really cute, and then there's like a hippopotamus going to the bathroom. Can you talk a little bit about just sort of this whole experience and what you're doing with Planet Zoo that sets it apart?
Yeah, I mean, Frontier is kind of known for revisiting the nostalgic games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Zoo Tycoon, with Planet Coaster previously, and now with Planet Zoo. So that's exactly what we're doing, and what you're hearing at the booth is kind of the spirit of the game as well. It's lovely, it's cute, it's educational, it's about the animals, it's about conservation, and really getting that feeling of nostalgia back for the players. Yeah.
Right off the bat, I saw something that I believe is canonical to most zoos, which is the peacock is kind of allowed to roam anywhere.
Yes, it's roaming in like in an area there.
Like a
it has a
communal
little
area,
habitat
right?
for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
But we do have options in the game as well where you can have invisible fences. So you can pretend that they're free roaming.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So I wanted to ask a bit about this sort of animal AI, because things have come a long way. Tell me about the animal AI. Tell me how smart these animals are.
Oh, they're very, 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 very smart, but then I would say that. I think they are the most authentic animals that have ever been in a video game, especially the amount of animals have, how they interact with the management aspect of the game. So they all have their own needs. And that means that you have to really design this environment for these animal needs. They have to feel well, they have to feel like they would in their own natural environment. That means you have to get the right plants in, you have to get the right kind of water content, how much grass do they like. All of that is important as you take care of these animals, and they respond in kind. No. They play more when they're happy, or when they get unhappy, they do a little.
So they get hungry, thirsty, tired, all that stuff.
They have all these needs that you can manage, yeah.
Do they ever try to escape?
They do, yeah. If your animals are in distress, if you're not taking good care of them, or if their habitat is unsuitable, they might try and get out.
Oh, wow.
Or if you're dealing with like cheeky monkeys, like the ring-tailed lemurs or something, they can actually climb on any sort of player-defined surface, like rocks and shelter and stuff. So if you don't place it correctly or strategically in your habitat, they can actually get out.
So I'm curious, this might sort of fly in the face of making a stable simulation, but do the animals have like unique personalities, or is it sort of like a group of animals behaves as one depending on how you're treating them? Like basically, will there be like one peacock that's really mean compared to the rest of them?
There's a bit of both, actually. So the animals are treated like individuals. So they come to your zoo, they will have a little bit of personality, some stats basically, and a name that's assigned to them, which you can change, but we have actually taken care into giving them names that are appropriate to the area that they're from. But yeah, basically they have little personalities, and then when you start breeding them, they'll take the traits from their parents and sort of evolve from that.
Oh.
You can trade with other players as well, so you can increase certain stats. For example, if you have a very angry grizzly bear, you can trade it up for an even angrier grizzly bear and see what he.
So I can
does
raise
in your
warrior
zoo.
peacocks if necessary.
Absolutely. But
Don't
do it.
Don't this is a nice game for nice people.
And in terms of the group behavior, there are certain animals that behave in herds, in groups, and they will have an alpha that they follow.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you could essentially have like a whole angry zoo full of angry animals?
I mean, you could. It's not something we particularly encourage, but obviously you can play however you want to play. There's loads of different options for you to delve into. Yeah.
That's great.
Now, obviously, the goal of most simulation games is to make a good zoo. But what happens when things go horribly wrong or the player is a twisted degenerate? Like how bad can things get? Can the animals will they come out and will they like eat people? Like do animal fights?
You wouldn't have a zoo left at the end. That's basically
that's
all
true.
your walls would be gone. All the people you hired before to take care of the zoo, they've all quit. They've all gone home, and all the animals are, well, we don't like to think of it, but little dust bones.
Okay.
Oh, no.
I feel like unemployment is a pretty best case scenario for animals breaking out of the zoo.
Yeah.
It's like there are too many lions everywhere. I quit. I'm out of here.
If you can quit being the tiger guy before being eaten by the tigers, that's a best case scenario, I think.
Yeah. There's definitely fights for dominance. So if you have two dominant alphas in your group, two tigers, for example, because we're looking at the tigers right now, they might actually engage in some sort of combat, and the winner will come out as the new alpha, and the other one will sort of leave with its tail behind its.
And the thing, if I may add, what you can see here as well is we're replacing kind of the right foliage in this environment, which you can research yourself in the Zoopedia that's in this game, where you can get all the information about all the animals and getting the right kind of environment for them, the right plants that they would find. These tigers like a lot of foliage because, well, they hunt deer in reality, and deer don't see red, so tigers look green. So in this environment, the tiger would be completely gone to the deer. So that's what they like, and that's a successful zoo. And that's where the management really lies, in getting that environment under control, understanding the animals you have in your park, and making them feel good.
Which they didn't do in Jurassic Park, which is why the Triceratops had that big bad poop.
Now,
he got sick.
Can't we go 20 minutes without you bringing up that scene? Now, you guys learned a lot from Planet Coaster, I imagine, and this has some of the familiar ideas. You've got a campaign, you've got the sandbox mode. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ideas from Planet Coaster that you've applied to Planet Zoo? Because roller coasters and wild animals have so much in common, I guess.
It's definitely still all about the simulation and the experience for both your guests and now in Planet Zoo also for your animals, and conservation and education are two very new things in that. I think we've learned a lot from Planet Coaster, we've learned a lot from Jurassic World Evolution that we now have sort of built on for Planet Zoo. It's like bigger and more, and everything is there. So yeah, we've taken the campaign from Planet Coaster, so it's now career mode in Planet Zoo, but we've added a little bit of a story. There's a narrative now, there's characters that take you all around the world. You get different challenges. Yes, there's tutorials, different challenges in different zoos, different biomes. There's so many things that you have to take into account when you're running a live zoo.
Well, what's interesting, we have the same crowds as we had in Planet Coaster, and as a sound designer, I was like, oh great, I don't have to do the sound for that, we already did it. And then we put the sounds in, and all the people talk like they do here, like really loudly, and you put them in, and you go, this is all wrong. We have to re-record all these crowd noises, because nobody talks in a zoo like they're screaming over the top of all these rides. So even though it's a lot of it is familiar from the previous games, a lot of stuff we had to do from scratch again to make it work in this game.
Now, when you go to the zoo, sometimes there's like one animal in one area, like the tigers get their own zone basically. But sometimes there's also just like 6 different animals just hanging out.
Yeah.
Like we live in San Francisco, the zoo there, they have like peacocks running around, and then right outside there's ostriches, and then giraffes all in the same place. Zebras are there too. Is that encouraged in this game to sort of like mix them up a little bit, get a couple of different animals in one area?
Absolutely. We have shared habitats in Planet Zoo, so basically if it behaves like that in the real world, it's probably going to happen that way in Planet Zoo as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They actually are happier. Some of the animals really like being with other species.
It will enrich them. Yeah.
Oh, it makes sense.
I have to ask, did you mocap any animals for this?
No, this is all done by hand and meticulously looked at animals, lots of video recordings of the animals, but then put everything together by hand to work with all these other systems. Because if you can make your own terrain, your own environment, all the footsteps have to be right?
Oh,
you can't just have them go like this and clip through all the ground. So there's a lot of technology running behind this, making sure they can scale, making sure that they follow the terrain perfectly. The animation team and the AI animation team have been fantastic.
There's a very dedicated designer who has studied about 500 YouTube videos about animal poop, because all the poop has its own physics.
All the poop has its own physics.
Oh yeah.
Print that on the box.
Max and I have studied 500 videos of animal poop, and we've never turned it into a job. So that sounds amazing.
A lot of people, I think, would love to take pictures of the animals. Do you have a photograph mode in this?
We support Ansel. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Awesome. How many animal species are in the game, and do you guys have personal favorites?
Ooh, we have many more than 50 animals.
Wow.
Species in the game, which is the official answer at the moment, but there's lots of animals. I don't know, favorite animals.
You have a favorite one?
The cheetah. I do love the
See, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Shout out to cheetahs. It's been nice being one for the last 7 minutes.
This is a good one. You guys have mentioned conservation work. I know that zoos for some people are sort of like a hot touchy subject, because some of them are like, they do a lot of good conservation work, and some of them are just, cash grab animal jails, which is awful. Can you talk a bit about sort of how that comes into play here?
Yeah, in the franchise mode. So franchise mode is a mode where you build up your own zoo with your own animals, and you were explaining earlier how when you breed animals, they take the DNA of the parents, so they might get a bit bigger or they live a bit longer, and these animals you can exchange with other people that have their own franchise zoos and do what real zoos do, which is conservation, and make sure that there's species diversity, DNA diversity, and that's basically what we're simulating with all the players that are going to play the game. They can already test that in the beta.
Great, and you guys have, you just put up a pre-order trailer. You've got a beta on the way, right?
We do, yeah. It's coming on the 24th of September, and you can play it all the way through to the 8th of October. You have to pre-order the deluxe edition before that date or during those dates, and then you can get your hands on with that right away, yeah.
Have any zookeepers played this game, or people who work at zoos? Have they come to you and been like?
We have them on the booth. We have quite a few people that come forward and say, "I work in a zoo. I'm so looking forward to this.
That's awesome.
I want to play this."
Absolutely, and we have the in-game Zoopedia, which is like our sort of encyclopedia for all the species that are in the game. And we worked really closely together with a lot of zookeepers all over the world to make sure that the research is correct and that all of the animal needs are adjusted to the species. And basically everything is supposed to be 100% how it's supposed to be in Planet Zoo.
I love that. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
And it's always a bit tricky doing an interview when there's clearly like a diehard community out there. You guys have a YouTube channel where you've been doing kind of very open videos. Can you talk about that for a bit?
We do, yeah. Our YouTube channel is @PlanetZooGame. That's everywhere. But yeah, we do anything from gameplay reveals. So we do like demos where we show the gameplay with our developers, and they come on and they give like really in-depth stories of how the things came to be. We also do some developer diaries where you can get a look behind the scenes at the studio. So yeah, there's loads to figure out there.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I've got to say, like reading the comments on Planet Zoo videos, they're all really positive and lovely, and it's such a bizarre change of pace from some of the stuff we're used to. So thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
Gamescom itself is kind of a zoo, and coming up next, we have something that is possibly the polar opposite of what we just did. It's Blasphemous. It is a terrifying, nightmarish hell ride of a blood feud. Let's check that out in a bit. But first, let me take these off. We got to take a break.
I'm going to wear mine all day.
Good.
Planet Zoo! Do you like planets? Do you like zoos? Do I have the booth for you? Let's check it out. So you go under the wonderful signage and you're hit with some more signage, this time on the ground. Which, wait, look. I love their logo because it's like a little lion's tail. I'm honestly so excited about this because I love animals so much. And they have these 2 streaming rooms, which as a streamer myself, is so lovely to see them supporting that. And yeah, let's continue on. Let's check out this little tree of life situation, which is so cute. And it's not, I hate to break it to everybody, it's not a real tree, but it's a very good-looking fake tree. And I just love that they have some seating areas because at Gamescom, you know, you're walking so much and you can get tired. They even have floor pillows. And they have picnic tables. Yum, yum. Picnics are fun. There's no food. Okay, they also have face painting. Can I get my face painted? Really? Before we start, before we started shooting, I was told I cannot get my face painted. But there's people that get to play this game. They have these cute little huts. And behind this sweet signage, which look at this little frog. Do I look like him? I'm not even, I don't know. They're very excited. I love these frogs. So yeah, there's people that are getting to play the game. They're getting hands-on. And they even get it in the ambiance. Let's continue. There's a photo booth. I love photo booths. Get that Instagram content. And this time you even get it with a, I was gonna say a frog. That's absolutely not a frog. It is an elephant, which is one of my favorite animals. And he's playing with a little ball. Here, wait, let me get on the other side so we can play together. Here, wait, take my picture. All right. Let's check it out. Ooh, there's a little sign situation with all the animals. At least I'm pretty sure it's all the animals that are available in this game. So this game is so cute. You can actually build like a monkey situation for your monkeys. A little jungle gym, which I love. I just love that it's more than just putting down animals and watching them hang out. You can get very hands-on with your zoo. And speaking of zoo, let's check out these animals. We have Pumbaa, maybe it's Timon, who can say, I don't remember. We have a hippo, we have Nala and Simba. We have Ostrich Lord 5000 and his brother, Michelle. And we have a peacock, we got Zaboomafoo, we have the crocodile from that movie Crawl. No, please. No, I have more. There's like a whole other side of animals to check out. Please come back.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got him.
Yes! Introducing the all-new Up It Nude! Up It Nude's new and improved recipe is chock full of lists, let's plays, unboxings, special guests, goofs, guffaws, and other content too stupid for regular weekdays.
Like some sort of color-changing reptile stripper man. I'm doing it. Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up It Nude, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom Now. I'm joined right now by Krzysztof Chomicki from Phobia Game Studios, whose Polish name I'm horribly butchering, and Brian Altano, whose
Butchered
name
mine
I did
too.
okay. Oh, shut up.
You did great.
You guys just have a game here with us. It's called Carrion. I love the look of it. It looks like a Metroidvania where you play as John Carpenter's The Thing, which means that you're kind of the monster in this universe.
Yes. So I can basically stand up. And
yeah, that's pretty much that's just about wraps it up.
Stand it up.
Thanks for coming. Gamescom's great. Come back to you later.
So I love this because we're so used to video games where there's like the hero character, the protagonist is like, oh, you're like the little good guy. You're gonna fight. In this case, you're just a revolting blob that is going around eviscerating people. Can you tell us a bit about how this comes together as a game?
Yeah. So as said, it's a Metroidvania where you play this. Not necessarily evil, it's just this monster which is obviously viewed as evil by the humans, which it's, but it might be, it's just its nature. Like, that's how things work for
It's just doing its thing. It's just hanging out.
As a human, we're terrible a lot, so this is justified, I would say, to do this kind of stuff. Now, when I first heard about the concept of this game, I thought it would be sort of like slower and clunkier because like monsters are big and hulking, and they take their kind of time to get through things and do damage. This is an incredibly quick, visceral, lashing. This is a character that is moving around a lot. How did you guys settle on on this type of species and the way it interacts with the environment?
I guess it was like lots of prototyping. It was months of our programmer/artist, because it's one guy doing that. Sebastian just sitting and trying to get the physics feel good and just coming up with how it could interact with the world. Like for example, one of the first prototypes had the monster absorb people by just running into them, and it was basically Katamari,
Right.
I said that earlier. This is like if Katamari was really evil.
Yeah.
You're absorbing people and you're sucking them up.
Yeah.
Now, just a minute ago, we saw the hero, the blob, go into the wall and do this odd thing where it sort of looked like a little heart and then made a new passageway. What's going on right there?
Yeah, so it's one of the goals of the game is setting up this interconnected system of nests, of those hives. So they entangle the whole level with tentacles, which then assist you in opening the exit door, but also they double as checkpoints. So you can respawn there, also you can save the game at any time in there. Also what's interesting, as you eat people, you grow larger. That's your health points basically.
Right.
And whenever you lose some parts of you due to damage, the people shooting them off or damaging you with flamethrowers or whatever they have damage you, those parts fall off, and then they turn into these worms which run back to the checkpoint, and then you can retrieve them later on by interacting with one of the...
That is so gross, and I love it.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, there's a lot of obviously like references to, sort of nods to vintage Metroidvania games here, like just in the aesthetic and the style and the way the gameplay unfolds. A lot of those games are about sort of like unlocking new powers and skills. How does that work for this sort of biological beast?
Yes, so what we have here is, this monster was captured by the scientists and experimented on, and they have more jars with those tissues of the species, and whenever you find some and break the jar apart and go inside, you absorb the tissue, and that allows you to evolve further, and that's how you get new skills.
Got it.
And then we have what we call a mass-based class system. So depending on your current size, you have different abilities you've previously unlocked at your disposal. So it's not always about just being as huge as possible.
Yeah.
As the levels and the puzzles get more complex, you have to start consciously managing your current size, because sometimes being smaller is actually the way to go. Actually, soon we're going to see the monster acquire the very first skill in the game.
Oh, so this is actually very early on in the game.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
What you don't see in this demo is the overworld. So normally, after completing each level, you go to this whole hub, connecting everything together, turning it into a pretty much proper Metroidvania. Here for the purpose of brevity and just showing more environments and more skills in the short time span that we have here, it's just those levels shrink together. But yeah, normally you have all the backtracking and everything you have in a Metroidvania pretty much. So yeah, now the monster, after it has its dinner, or the 100th dinner in those 5 minutes, now it's setting up another hive.
Oh, that is gross. Look at that. It's like confetti.
Yay!
Yeah. Party streamers.
Celebration.
Yeah, it's a kids game,
Yeah.
It's for everyone. Kids love it. So now this is the jar, similar to the one you've escaped from at the very beginning.
Right.
Now it's tearing it apart.
Which is essentially like this game's, Chozo statues or something. Like the ability to break into those things and gain new skills. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So now you've learned cobweb shooting.
Yes, and now that allows you to trigger those remote switches, like this.
Oh, right.
And now you can unlock access to the area that was next to this chamber, which was previously inaccessible. So this is this very first Metroidvania moment. We're just teaching players how this flow works, and eventually it obviously gets more complex and the levels more sprawling and so on.
Yep.
You mentioned puzzles. I see a lot of physics stuff going on here. Are there sort of physics-based puzzles?
Pretty much most of the interactions with the humans, with the environment, are physics-based. Like the whole monster movement is physics-based, although the puzzles themselves are mostly like skill-based. So we don't expect you won't have those like seesaw things like we had in Half-Life 2, for example. We don't have to show off every
With all due respect to Half-Life 2, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. What were the inspirations behind the creature design, besides the thing, obviously?
Yeah, that was obviously the main one, and basically any of the quality 80s, 90s action horror movies, you know, Alien, Predator, all this stuff, like movies were raised on. So our childhood basically. And the sole idea of reversing the roles, making this reverse horror, as we call it. I'd say the main inspiration behind that was Alien vs. Predator. The games, obviously, not the movie.
I thank you for clarifying. That is an actual and very important sticking point right there.
Oh, yeah, a very.
Vast difference. An ocean of quality separates those things.
So, you know, playing as the Predator and the Alien, especially crawling up the walls and the ceiling, scaring the shit out of those poor Marines.
Hanging on the ceiling and dropping down and
and biting their heads off. It was really awesome, and something that wasn't really explored all that much. Like, ever since the last AVP, it was almost a decade. I think it was 2010 that we had the last one.
Yeah, and it's also, we don't really get to see that in like a 2D side-scrrolling, Metroidvania perspective either.
Like ever since we did have some like bad guy games, for example, we had Hatred, also a Polish game, but you were just a regular dude that went on a rampage, and whenever you played as some creature, it was rather this fluffy, cute, pet-like thing you want to cuddle instead of this humongous, awesome monster that gives you, like, you can realize this power fantasy of being the horror.
No, I was thinking a little bit of there's the Drinkbox games, what is it, the Outer Blobs from Outer Space or something? This feels like an M-rated version of that, which I'm pretty into. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the story of the game? Does it open up with like kind of establishing who you are, or do you pick it up through the environment?
Yeah, we want to keep it kind of obscure on purpose. We're leaving lots of blanks for the players to fill in. Yep. What you saw with the jar sequence, with you breaking out, that's at least currently that's the very beginning of the game. We don't want to explicitly state that, oh, you are an alien, or oh, you are a failed experiment, or whatever. You know, whenever you had this awesome movie villain or creature that was kind of mysterious, it was awesome, and then eventually they do the prequel that explains everything.
Yes.
And it's, oh, so yeah, it's not that cool, or oh, so he doesn't like sand. Oh, yeah, so...
No, it was like when they made a Texas Chainsaw prequel and he's like in high school or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't need to see all that.
Yeah, or even The Ring, the Japanese one, has a prequel, and it's basically high school drama, yeah? So
yeah, no, I appreciate you guys being vague about that.
Yeah, we want the players to come up with their own theories. Actually, the most popular theory on our Discord channel on our Discord server is that it's just leftover spaghetti that's mutated in this monster.
I think there's a Cowboy Bebop episode about that.
Yeah, as an Italian, I appreciate that. Obviously, I assume you guys are Metroid fans, right? Like old school Metroid fans. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be totally honest with me. How would your creature fare in a fight against classic bounty hunter Samus?
That's a good question. I think the armor is the problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
Actually, that's a kind of a good segue here. Obviously, we're seeing the monster dealing with a lot of humans. Some of them have guns. Are there bosses in the games? Like any sort of
bosses? Maybe not. At least not now. We're still in the pre-alpha stage. We're still developing the content, so things can change. Plus, I'm also not spoiling some things.
Sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but we do have stronger enemies like armored guys, which you actually can't eat. You can mess them around, but they're inedible. Plus, later on, we have sentry drones, flamethrower guys.
I think I saw a screenshot of the flamethrower guys.
Yeah.
What is it called? Does it have a name? Carrion, or is it?
Yeah, we don't want to explicitly give it a name. We also often refer to it as Carrion because.
Does Carrion have a specific weakness, like fire or ice or electricity or something, or is it?
No, it actually thrives on electricity. It's some of the abilities. The defensive one require you to charge yourself up by grabbing a power outlet and charging yourself up. Yeah, but flames are super deadly. So when you catch fire, you actually have to find some water source as quickly as possible.
So it's like Wario. I like that.
Yeah.
Will be
is
burning up.
Is there a miss Carrion?
What's wrong with you?
I don't know. I'm wondering if this creature is lonely and is looking.
What do you
for
want
love.
its number? Like,
maybe. No, I mean, like, if there's other ones in the world, maybe.
How do you know it's not a she?
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I just hope it finds love someday.
Okay, Ryan, I'm gonna have to cut you off there. When can you're in pre-alpha right now, but when can people get their hands on this? Do you have a target release window? Or?
Sometime next year. We don't have any specific one, except it's not going to be April when Cyberpunk releases.
Yep.
Because we're going to be playing it.
That's a good idea. Yes.
Good answer.
Very, very smart.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming by. I'm dying to just be a disgusting monster. We are going to be disgusting monsters much more after this. That was a weird segue. Lots more Gamescom coming up in just a bit.
Thanks.
Hey, Nick, did you hear about the new Marvel news?
No, what happened? What happened? Hey, what happened? Tell me.
Has this ever happened to you? Good news! It doesn't have to! The Daily Fix is here every day with a concentrated dose of all that gaming, movie, TV, streaming, internet, and puppy news you need to survive the work week. All right, so puppy news isn't on it yet, but I'm working on it. Roll the thing!
Reggie Fils-Aimé is retiring.
Eagle-eyed fans are combing through every last frame.
I can't prepare.
Oh.
Stay right here on IGN.
And keep it locked to IGN.
IGN Now. New news that's new to you.
Introducing the all-new Up It News.
Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up at Noon. Weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Hello, everybody. Max and Brian here. This is IGN at Gamescom now. We are on the show floor at the Nintendo booth, and there's something very special here. Brian, what is this?
It's a Nintendo Switch Lite. This is not out until September 20th, but there are 3 in the wild right here on the show floor. This is our first time seeing them in person. I will always have a flutter in my heart for brand new Nintendo handheld hardware. These are especially wonderful. From left to right, we have turquoise, we have yellow, and we have gray. These are the 3 Switch Lite launch colors that you'll be able to get on September 20th. They are $199 each. I don't know what that converts to euro, but it's probably roughly the same. The interesting thing about these is that this is a revision of the Nintendo Switch that you've used for a few years now. Adorable little handheld, now much smaller. The other thing is that this is a handheld-only system, whereas the Switch, you know, by name is able to do console and handheld stuff. This is only handheld. You won't be able to connect this to a TV in any way. It also utilizes Nintendo's newer screens, which are a little bit better on battery. It's got a slightly better battery life. Hopefully, a better Joy-Con without any drift, but as you can see, a much better D-pad. We actually brought our own Nintendo Switch into the wild right here. This is the brand new, slightly revised Nintendo Switch that just launched about 10 days ago. Slightly improved battery, slightly better screen, but as you can see, massive size difference between these 2 things. This has the Joy-Cons that click on and off. This does not have any removable Joy-Con at all. I love the Switch Lite. It's really cool. I don't necessarily need one. I have a Switch. You're holding it.
Yeah, no, I think that there's something special about these. I think a lot of people want these because they are like, they're new, they're colorful, they're shiny. I think they're kind of like toys, you know? They're designed for playing with. And I mean, obviously, there's some complaints that this isn't a brand new, fully revised Switch Pro.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever see something like that?
I think we will down the line. I think right now a lot of people heard rumors of a Switch Pro and they thought for sure we'd get some like beefier, high-powered thing. And instead we got something that's like cuter and more toyetic. But you know what? This comes out on September 20th, which is the same day as The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. A remake of one of the best handheld games of all time, if not the best, a Game Boy classic, and I think it's really cool to have a new Switch that's basically like a little Game Boy. That gray one in the corner reminds me of something they would have put out back in the day. Turquoise and, you know, almost banana yellow over here. I love that I'm just pointing with my other Switch. Are like it's just like, they're very classic Nintendo colors.
Yeah, no, I'm very into it. Obviously, this one could be, you know, Donkey Kong's bananas or Pikachu. Yep. What does the turquoise one remind you of?
I don't. It just reminds me like of a nice ice blue blue mint or a delicious candy.
Player 2 Yoshi or something.
Yeah, something like that. These are very like fun 90s Nintendo colors. We've seen old N64 controllers in colors like this. So yeah, this is it right here in the wild. Do you want one? I do. I already pre-ordered the gray one. Now I want to cancel my pre-order, maybe go with a different color.
I want one of these.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that I've barely plugged my Switch into a TV.
Yeah.
I love this. I mean, dare I say it, it feels almost like a Vita 2.
Yeah.
In fun colors. But yeah, I hope they make translucent colored ones. Give me an atomic purple portable Switch Lite Mini, whatever they're calling it. We have so much more coming out of Gamescom. This is IGN at Gamescom now. It's a really fun place to be. Stick around.
What's up, everybody? Destin Legary here at Gamescom 2019. Matt Purslow is joining me today.
Hi there.
Guess what game we're going to talk about?
I think it might be Cyberpunk 2077.
It is definitely Cyberpunk 2077. You're correct. You won. So what we're going to talk about is what they're showing at Gamescom. Now, what they're showing is a stealth/strength build. Go through an infiltration mission. Take us through the setup to all of this, if you remember.
Right, so we're in a place called Pacifica, which is it's a slightly more rundown area of the city. Now, we all know that Night City is fairly rundown, so this is the worst of the worst, it seems to be. And we're infiltrating this area, and basically the demo kind of cuts between two different builds, so we get to see basically from how you go in all guns blazing to how you go in as a net runner, which is a much more stealthy build. And it was really nice to see the contrast between the two sides that you can play as. I mean, this is just two sides of how you play the game anyway, out of what is presumably a multitude of different types of builds you can do.
Yeah, I mean, we know that you're going to be able to spec your character however you want, and if you don't like that, you can give it another shot. Alternatively, net running was really, really powerful, and I was really, really happy to see that because I love playing stealth. What is your main play style? Do you do stealth or guns blazing?
So I tend to be a bit of I'm really into immersive sim, so Dishonored is kind of in my blood now. So I think looking at the way that Netrunner works was very much like, oh, this is how I want to play. But also seeing strength builds and how sort of like the different, like going in with the different weaponry that this this setting allows you to use. You know, you've got guns that can literally, like, you can tag people, and you've got homing bullets like the gun from Fifth Element, and like being able to do that is like, oh wait, but can I create a build that allows me to do both? And I'm looking forward to trying all of that out.
Yeah, the strength build, he like rips a turret and takes out the gun, then just mows down the animals basically, that they're the class that we're fighting in the stealth infiltration mission.
Yeah, not actual animals that should be fighting this. So at least so far we've not seen physical beasts in the game, but yeah, it's seeing those animals points out like there's going to be quite clearly lots of different clans in the game and lots of different types of people to fight. So I'm looking forward to having that almost that fantasy RPG element come into it, but through a cyberpunk lens.
For sure. I have to ask you, Keanu Reeves was a big reveal at E3 2019. What do you think of that character and his implementation? He, of course, plays Johnny Silverhand, and he's like a voice in your ear. Do you like that? Are you enjoying that?
So I think kind of like Johnny Silverhand is such an important element of the tabletop game, and so it's nice that he's in there, and I think it's great that they've chosen Keanu. I'm hoping that he's not too much of an overpowering presence, because the idea of just having effectively Neo from the Matrix just keep turning up could be a distraction from what is a game that doesn't have all of the celebrity sort of elements to it. The way that they're using him as kind of almost like a narrator for you, like perhaps even like a Jiminy Cricket that sits in your head that allows you to sort of like, should you be doing this, should you be doing that? As long as it is kept low-key, I think it will work.
They also revealed that it's coming to Stadia here at Gamescom. Are you going to try out Stadia? Like I'm sure you will for work, but are you going to buy one for personal use?
It's one of these things where like I've been a PC gamer all my life, and I've always been investing money into a PC. And so at the moment I don't feel necessarily the need, but I'm fascinated to see the idea of like, can I just stop buying upgrades for my PC and just have a Stadia package? If Cyberpunk runs as well as it should do on the massive data center that Google have, and there's no latency to my personal devices, then I'm kind of very interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Cyberpunk, I want that on my PC. I'm definitely, so like I can upgrade my PC. And NVIDIA also revealed that they're going to be adding ray tracing to the game, so I want to be able to utilize those special effects and just enhanced lighting abilities that those cards have. I know this more than anything. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game I am going to know life. It will be the game I play every day, probably for a month. Are you going to do the same?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is it's coming out at a period where the month before we'll have had like Watch Dogs, we'll have had the Final Fantasy VII Remake. It looks like an amazing period for games, but I can see that Cyberpunk is going to be the one that makes you put everything down. It's like, this is the game for the year, and I'll be surprised if anything turns up that is more impressive next year. But hey, it's an amazing time for games. Maybe that game will turn up, who knows?
Of course, thank you so much, Matt. Time will tell if Cyberpunk ends up being that game for everybody. I think we already know the answer. But for more on all things Cyberpunk 2077, keep it right here at IGN and with us at Gamescom 2019.
Hello everybody, Max here. This is IGN at Gamescom now. I'm here at the retro area with my good friend and Nintendo historian Brian Altano.
Hey.
And we are hanging out with every Nintendo 64 controller ever made, I believe. Brian,
this is an incredible collection. This is
one of the craziest controller designs ever, and here we see every possible iteration.
Absolutely. I mean, decades later, the N64 controller is still weird and strange and iconic, but we have such nostalgia for it. Sure, it wasn't really great for 2D platformers, but we didn't really have to get a lot of those. You mostly held this controller sort of, I guess, southpaw. You would put your left hand in the middle and your right hand on the other side, and you played games like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye, Mario Kart, some of the most iconic and cherished games of all time. But it's a weird controller. One of the cool things about the N64 is it had 4 controller ports in the front of the system. One of the first systems to ever let you do that. And so that made people like me go, I need a bunch of N64 controllers. So what better way to do that than to celebrate just tons and tons of them? Let's start with the gray one right up here. Obviously the one that came packed in with the system. If you wanted a second one, that's what the North American and European box art looked like. Japan got something a little bit cooler.
That's way cooler.
Yeah, way cooler. Down here, we started getting into more of the weirder colors they did. They actually did a lot of these at launch. There was banana yellow. There was this really awesome jet black one.
This was such a wonderful thing that separated the N64 from the competition, is that they were not afraid to get weird and colorful. At the time, you know, the PlayStation was kind of like, yes, here's the gray thing.
Yeah.
You know, and occasionally you'd get like colorful variations, but Nintendo was still coming off the sort of hype of the Play It Loud era.
It's
and
true.
They're just getting goofy with it.
This was also right before the time before the iMac started doing their thing and having tons of colors coming out too. At launch, there was also the red, blue, and green colors down here. You can see all of their respective packaging. Once again, Japan always gets it just a little bit cooler. Plus it has that tag you can hang like an action figure. I love it so much. Let's take a look down here. This is where things started getting a little more interesting as well. They started doing sort of smoky, translucent stuff evocative of the GBA era and the Game Boy Color era. Lots of, you know, this was the smoke black controller, jungle green, extreme green, ice blue, and up here we have grape, watermelon, and fire, which they look like Jolly Ranchers. Like,
I like
kind
that
of awesome.
they're like, they could have gone with just, you know, like orange, like tangerine
Yeah.
or something, but they were like, no, fire orange to go with watermelon red.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You can't play Legend of Zelda without one of the most beloved N64 controllers of all time, and that is gold. The gold N64 controller was incredibly sought and sought after, and people loved it so much. To this day, it's one of my favorites. I actually have one under my desk at IGN. Or maybe you're a Pokemon kid, and you got tons of these different ones. All these special edition Pokemon controllers were available all over the world. There's
Down here, there's the beloved atomic purple.
Yeah, that's another classic color right there.
Everyone wants a Switch in that color.
So let's get a little bit weirder. Maybe you wanted something a little more exclusive. Up here, this is where things start to get crazy. Some of these are incredibly limited. You've maybe never seen them anywhere. I've actually never even heard of half of these. This is the Dai Hawks controller.
Is that a Japanese baseball team?
Maybe. Just Go, which sounds like an oil company and probably
Is that
isn't.
like a retail exclusive
Yeah,
controller?
I think so. I
Okay.
think same thing goes for Hello Mac. And then down here we have the Jeffrey controller from Toys R Us, the iconic, rest in peace, Toys R Us mascot, who comes back from the dead every couple of years to haunt children with toys.
I remember this one right here. That was for the 100th issue of Nintendo Power.
Yeah, so that was a hard one to get as well. That's the gold controller with slightly different trimming and that beautiful, you know, embossed logo up there. The Millennium 2000 over there is about as peak turn of the century as you can possibly get.
What was the occasion for that, aside from the year?
We're just celebrating Prince.
Okay, fair enough.
Over here we have the E3 Golden N controller. This has to be one of the rarest N64 controllers ever made. And in the back, the DK64 banana yellow one, which as you can see from the sort of prongs sticking out, has the weird little banana identifiers on it.
I like it, and I also hate it. It could just be a regular yellow one that your brother got fudgical handprints all over.
Exactly. This is the red and gray Comboy controllers. Probably never heard of those before either. And yeah, a bunch of more interesting translucent ones. Sort of this sort of like icy blue one that kind of looks like cough medicine.
Do you think that glows in the dark?
Yeah. So lastly, absolutely. Lastly, I want to take you guys over here. Some of you may not have been so lucky to get first-party Nintendo 64 controllers. Maybe you gave your brother or your cousin the crappy third-party ones. Things get a little bit weirder down here. Down here we have this, which is the LodgeNet. This actually plugged into your television directly. It was hardwired. Over here,
that was for hotels, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That was all where you'd pay like $13 to play Mario Kart for one night.
Yeah, this had a bunch of games pre-built into it. Now, China obviously has a huge problem with piracy in video games, so the best way to launch the N64 there was with the iQ, a fat N64-looking controller that had a bunch of games pre-built into it, such as Super Mario 64.
That looks like a cross between a Dreamcast controller and a waffle iron.
Yep. And then down here we have a Mario Kart controller, which not too special, but it came packed in with the game itself. And a couple more, such as Clear Red and Clear Blue. Yeah, man, the N64.
That's really cool. I think there's something very special about seeing all these in one place, just seeing the full kind of spectrum of all those colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots more stuff like this here at Gamescom. There's probably too much of it to even keep track of, but we're doing our best right here at IGN at Gamescom now, so stick around. Short break right now.
See you soon.
Reggie Fils-Aimé is retiring.
Eagle-eyed fans are combing through every last frame.
I came prepared.
Oh.
Stay right here on IGN.
And keep it locked to IGN.
IGN Now. New news that's new to you.
Introducing the all-new Up-It News!
Don't touch it. What's wrong with you? Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up at noon, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got him.
Yes, yes, yes.
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom now. Blasphemous is an incredibly gruesome-looking, pixelated game that clearly is pulling from a lot of influences that are near and dear to us. Here to tell us about it, Enrique Colonette and my good friend Brian Altano.
What's up?
This is a game. Can we just like get some footage up real quick because I love to look at it.
Yeah.
It's incredibly gruesome, clearly pulling from some like Castlevania. It's got some.
Yeah, some bits of Metroidvania games, some bits of Dark Souls games. So we're trying to appeal to all these fans, you know.
These are my languages right now.
Yeah,
this is what I like to hear.
No, this is like chocolate and peanut butter. This is a good setup right here.
Blood.
Yeah, lots of blood. Yes. So you showed a demo at E3, which had sort of like a little cutscene in the middle of it, where the main character takes off his helmet and fills it with blood, and then starts drinking the blood.
No, come on. Well, almost, but no. He puts it. So there is a way to make it even more metal, right? But no, it doesn't do that. So that's kind of like your, how you said, like when you have this baby, you take it to the church and you do this.
A baptism, yeah.
A baptism, the baptism of blood.
Wow, this is a blasphemous game. I'm into it.
Baptism of Blood almost sounds like the name of a Castlevania or a heavy metal game. Yeah, totally. This is obviously pulling from classic Castlevania games. Is obviously something you definitely grew up playing.
Yes.
You mentioned Dark Souls. Is there like a specific era of Castlevania or like that like was some of your favorites that you could say like you've kind of leaned on for inspiration here?
Well, sure, especially from the Symphony of the Night era.
Yep.
So we were deeply influenced by this this specific game. I've been playing it like a lot. I'm a huge Castlevania fan. I have a huge collection. So it was a blast to work on a game that was based on that genre. Like it was a dream come true.
No, that's I'm a huge Castlevania fan as well. So seeing that makes me really happy. The animation's awesome. The pixel art is amazing.
Yeah.
Were there any other sort of things from pop culture that inspired the look of this game? Obviously, there's a lot of almost classic paintings, almost like crucifixion paintings. Like
actually, we're coming from a city in South Spain, which is called Sevilla, and we have been deeply influenced by religious themes and traditions, but they are like more old traditions, music music, paintings, and writing. But you know, at some point we thought, okay, we've seen like Japanese and Chinese doing these games with their traditions, like turning this folklore into games. Why don't do something similar with the Spanish one? It's dark as hell. I mean, Sevilla was the headquarters for the Spanish Inquisition, so we had all the references around the corner.
Now we're both art school guys. I'm curious, was there any specific art that you pulled from? Because there's no shortage of like religious art out there.
What do you mean with that?
Just like paintings or
well, maybe painters like Murillo or Goya, which are Spanish.
Yeah,
So we
I
took
totally see that now.
Yeah, the day we released the art book, people will see like concept art that look, I mean, like real paintings. Although we had to turn that into pixel art, so we lose a lot of detail in that,
well,
in that transition.
I would argue that you do gain a lot of detail in a different direction, because that's like traditionally pixel art up until things started to get a little more horrific with stuff like Castlevania was like hoppy boppy, fun platforming, colorful, vibrant, you know, kid stuff. And so to take a lot of those themes and bring them over here, you know, it's very wonderful to see. Now tell me about the character a little bit, because I really dig I dig what's going on with this dude. He has this cone head that's surrounded in a crown of thorns almost.
Yes.
Like he's a very tortured soul. Is he okay?
So no, probably not. So he doesn't talk too much in the game. Actually, it's one of those mute characters. So things happen around him. So you are the penitent one. So you are the last member of a brotherhood called the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow.
Oh.
And you are in a mission to find the source of this evil thing that floats around the world of Custodia, which is the place where the action is taking place. So you have to find the source of this thing, which we call the miracle, which is something that it's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. It affects everything and everyone in the world in different ways.
Oh, wow.
So you have to find that, well, do something with that, because that's a spoiler.
Oh, that's awesome. Now we saw wall jumping there.
Yes.
Obviously, verticality and traversal play a huge role in games like this. What sort of maneuvers can players expect to unlock throughout the game?
Yeah,
without spoiling too much, of course.
No, that's fine. We feature like a wide variety of combat mechanics, because we figured out that was kind of like one of the most important pillars of the game. But also we feature some vertical mechanics, like for example wall climbing. Since the game is non-linear and you can revisit areas, since it's taking inspiration from Metroidvania games. We needed some ways to explore the way more deeply. Like for example, in this specific area, we introduced this mechanic. But what else do we have? I cannot remember. We could do. Shit. Now everything is coming to my mind, and I don't know how to start.
No, it's totally cool, man.
But yeah, we have our big pillar was the combat, but also we have exploration. So the game really rewards exploration. If you're struggling with one area, you can just say, okay, I'm done with this area. I want to backtrack, and that's it. I want to get better. I want to improve my character. I want to get upgrades, and then maybe later I will come back to to kill those guys and get to the top.
Awesome. Now, earlier we saw sort of a cutscene, this like beautiful animated thing, which felt more like it felt more like something from like another world. Like it was very
like literally another world the game, or
no, well, not another world the game, but it's not the kind of thing we usually see in Metroidvanias. I feel like usually all the kind of storytelling is done through sort of like lower third, dialogue boxes.
Yeah.
How frequently does that pop up? Does these animated sequences happen?
So we feature a few ones. I don't know the exact number, but we have some for the key moments of the game. And obviously, since our commitment was to go for the pure pixel art style, that meant that if we wanted to feature like cutscenes in the game, we had to do it in pixel art. So as well with the bosses, for example, they are huge and they have to be animated frame by frame, also pixel art. So we are not using any hybrid technique. We're not using like fancy shaders or fake 3D. Everything is pixel art.
Oh. Now, one of my favorite things to do in games like this is to break walls and smash into things and open up things. Is this a game you can 100%? Like, is there a percentage counter?
You know, I'm a Castlevania fan, so
of course.
What to expect?
Yes,
of course.
I just needed to hear you say it because that makes me very, very.
So I know how this works. So the Castlevania fans will expect, okay, if I get to the final boss, I want to stop there. I want to say, hey, just wait for me. I have things to do in the, in some areas behind. So of course that's allowed. And
now, I think right here we have some exclusive gameplay of a boss fight.
Whoa!
Is this Our Lady of the Charred Visage?
Oh my God!
Good Lord.
So for the
you're fighting this? Who is this character in the foreground? Is that the lady?
Yeah, it's actually like a saint that died on the top of the convent. You find like at the top of the mountain, you find a convent. Here, you fight this final boss, this gruesome final boss. So we feature like around 7 areas in the game. All of them have this final boss that is huge. But that doesn't mean that there are only 7 final bosses. There are other bosses that you find in the middle of certain areas.
I'm overwhelmed with joy right now. This is exactly what I want to see.
So metal.
It's also. Did I just catch like a bouncing the ball back with the sword mechanic like from Link to the Past?
Yeah, sometimes in certain situations you can deflect certain projectiles. I'm not promising you that you can deflect everything. Like for example, that laser beam.
Sure.
That would be too easy.
Or for example, that magic one cannot be deflected. But there are some like especially physical ones that you can deflect with the sword. The sword is a key element of the game. This is why we feature only one weapon. Because it's a key element. It's a key narrative element.
Now, we saw sort of a skill tree earlier. Can you talk a little bit about that? If there's only one sort of key weapon?
Yeah, so you find that the sword is called Mea Culpa, which is, I think the translation will be my guilt. Right?
Yeah.
So you find these altars along the game, and in these altars you can power up the sword, so it gets a bit more powerful, and also you can unlock new abilities, new ways to express yourself in combat. So for example, you want to unlock the vertical attack, a charge attack, a projectile actually that it's your own blood. Of course, you have to catch yourself and throw your blood. You have also a thrust attack, so you can attack several enemies in a row. Not all the special attacks are convenient in every moment. Some of them are actually will put you in a dangerous situation.
We are so close to killing this boss right now.
Yes.
I'm so excited. This is like one of the coolest. This is awesome. Oh my god.
Oh,
yes.
What is that?
Well, that's not blood.
This is metal as hell. I love it.
Yes.
This rules so hard. How do you come up with a creature like this? Like, what was that, man?
It's around the corner in our city.
Really?
No,
He's just like a local dude that's in
things
the
like for example, this one. You can visit some churches in Sevilla that are holding the corpse of a certain nun or priest from like hundreds of years ago. Actually, every year in our cathedral, you can see the corpse, the uncorrupted corpse of one of our kings from like 300 years ago. And it's pretty small right now because it shrinks with the time. You know? But yeah, we are so used to this kind of things, dark things in our city, that we don't even realize how dark and twisted it is sometimes. But when you see the game with the eyes from someone that is not from Spain, you start realizing, holy shit, it's dark.
No,
it's twisted.
I was gonna say, Enrique, you're like a very warm, nice man. You're like jovial. You're laughing a lot, and then you're like, "Here's my game," and it's like, "Oh my god, this is a lot."
Yeah.
I love it.
No, because I'm in Germany now, so I don't have to behave like a dark, twisted person.
Of course.
Now, I've got to ask you, the game is called Blasphemous. Have you had any, like, kind of...
backlash or something?
Yeah.
Or problem with that? Actually, we have these brotherhoods in our city with hundreds of penitents that wear these cone-shaped hats, and because that's something that happens in our city every year. We have these parades with penitents. And actually, we know some of them that like video games. I was like, love it.
Really?
Yeah, we love this thing. I mean, because it's kind of like a homage to everything that has been like thrown to us since we were kids. It's part of our culture. It's part of who we are. But we wanted to express ourselves in a way that was not done before. We didn't want to compose a new flamenco song. We didn't want to write a book. We wanted to make a video game because we are developers, and it ended being this, Blasphemous.
Hell yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
Spanish folklore filtered through 16-bit gruesome Metroidvania.
It rules.
That is badass.
No, that's like, thank you so much for making a game like this. This is like I've been saying, this is extremely my kind of game.
It looks awesome.
Then look, even the map right there.
Yeah,
I'm like, yep, that's where I want to explore every part of this game.
Beautiful. What platforms is it coming to, and when is it going to be released?
Yeah, so it's releasing on 10th of September, like in 3 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, it's around the corner. And it's going to be released on PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch. All of them,
Beautiful.
same day.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming by. We have so much more Gamescom coming up right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got him.
Yes. Hey, Nick, did you hear about the new Marvel news?
No, what happened? No, what happened? Hey, what happened? Tell me.
Has this ever happened to you? Good news! It doesn't have to! The Daily Fix is here every day with a concentrated dose of all that gaming, movie, TV, streaming, internet, and puppy news you need to survive the work week. All right, so puppy news isn't on it yet, but I'm working on it. Roll the thing!
Welcome back to IGN at Gamescom now. I'm joined by Jerome and Baptiste to discuss Young Souls.
Yes.
These fine gentlemen are developers on that project, so tell us, what is Young Souls?
So, Young Souls is really hard for us to pitch because it's a game with a lot of different stuff in it. But basically, we can say that it's an adventure beat 'em up. But with a setting, it's set like a classical dungeon RPG, where you have two stations. You have the village station and you have the dungeon station.
Yeah.
But
actually, the village takes place in a contemporary world, and you have this mix of contemporary world in the village and the medieval setting in the dungeons.
And we have our two protagonists, so I want to dive into their story and what their deal is. But first I want to ask, I've only ever seen footage of Young Souls with two characters on screen. So is it a co-op only game? Can you play it single player? How does that work?
No, in fact, you can play it both in co-op or in single player. And actually, even the single player has two different modes. So you can play, you can play with the AI that can assist you. And you can also just play by solo and switching between the two characters. So there are plenty of different options.
Very cool. What is the name of our protagonists here?
So you got Jen and Tristan. And Jen and Tristan are twin brother and sisters. So they are, those guys are two, they live in a city where they are not really good kids, in fact. They are kind of outcasts in the city. And from their childhood, they've always been abandoned. They are kind of lost kids. They get, one day, they met a guy, a kind of old, weird professor, and he sheltered them, and he took care of them. And he was, in fact, for them, the only guy who really take care of them and who they really care for. And one day this guy disappeared, and that's how their adventure begins.
Is this like a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of scenario where there's a separate fantasy universe that they are able to kind of teleport to?
Yeah.
And what is going on in this alternate universe? Is it almost like an upside down, where like there's kind of an echo of reality, but they're...
No, it's the other word is deep underground.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. In fact, in the story, we got in the past goblins and humans fought, and humans win, and they send goblins deep underground. And then goblins, some goblins are forgot about that. But some of them, now they know that at first they own the surface, so they want to reach the surface back.
Gotcha. It's almost Gears of War coming up from the surface. I really like it. Sure. Tell us about the goblins. What is their motivation? And in terms of enemy variety, what are we looking at?
Well, we have plenty of different enemies in the game. It's like we have produced a huge content for the beat 'em up kind of style. And even all the items, we can equip with a lot of different items. We have a really strong customization system on the characters. And there is definitely a lot of different game modes.
But for the goblins, in fact, we have two kind of goblins. We got the good goblins and the evil goblins. And you got allied goblins in the game also. So it's not only evil people. You got some good goblins.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So in fact, the story with the goblins is that the professor that sheltered the two kids was a kind of explorer of the goblin world. And he found some goblins and he get friends with some of them. And he was he was pacifist, he was kind of diplomat. And one day he get kidnapped by an evil army, evil goblin army, and that army wants to reach the surface, but all the other goblins are not really, all the goblins are not following him. So you get really many different goblins, and it's not only evil, it's not only You know, it's not only.
I think that's so cool. You know, I think one of like the most prevailing video game tropes is that a single faction is always portrayed as purely evil, but it's so much more interesting when it's nuanced.
Yes.
Is this a boss fight or is this just a very large?
No,
goblin?
it's just a huge monster.
He's been fed very well.
The boss fight arrives just a bit after. But yeah, we got a lot of different huge bosses like that. This one is kind of big troll, and we really wanted to have many different gameplays. So we have some small and fast mobs and some bigger mobs.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got a
lot of different scales between the enemies, and actually that's the intro of the game. And just after that, you'll see a huge boss fight with like a
wonderful
big mecha goblin.
That's coming up. While that's happening, why don't you talk us through the combat? Obviously, side-scrolling, beat-em-up action. What kind of abilities do you have? Are there like large cooldowns, or is it all kind of quick, agile attacks?
In fact, you can customize your character as you want. You have like 5 different type of weapons. Each one has a completely different movesets, and you can do some special combos and stuff like that. So it's very deep, and you can also have some spells, some secondary weapons that are completely changing the game, like a grappling hook, a bow, bombs, and plenty. It's really, it's quite...
You said the magic word earlier, which is items, and I want to talk about that, but before, since we have the boss up on the screen, let's discuss boss mechanics, complexity. How difficult and intricate are the boss fights in Young Souls?
The boss fights have a different kind of moves and patterns. They are not like the biggest complexity, difficult to understand, but you really have to think about how the character will be equipped, because you have different elements that you can use. So, in fact, the idea behind the game was to see what was in the dungeon and equip accordingly. So you have to always change your stuff and gears. And
so let's talk about the loot. I mean, the loot, from what I've seen, is almost like a full-blown ARPG. Is that the scale you're going for? Are there things like item rarity, sets? Is that a thing?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, we have plenty of different items, and all the statistics have influence on the gameplay. So you have to be careful about the weight of your items and what they will provide. And but for the loot system, we haven't got a classic hack and slash loot system, because all the levels are handcrafted. There is no procedural levels, so it's more of a story-driven game, and you have to buy your items and choose carefully what items you will need for the next few dungeons. So it has a kind of its unique system regarding the items.
Very cool. So we have the twins, and obviously whether you're playing with an AI or kind of swapping between or playing with a friend, it seems like co-op mechanics would be heavily incentivized. Can you tell us what kind of co-op mechanics there are in Young Souls?
In fact, we didn't design real co-op mechanics. It's just the gameplay which influence the cooperation. We're just designing items that can influence cooperation, but we don't have really like, you know, the QTE with the cooperation moves. We don't have this kind of stuff. It's only the stuff you will equip that will
in fact, the game pushes you to equip your character to have a synergy between them.
Yeah, you get synergy.
So, we don't have specific moves in co-op because we think the single-player mode would feel like a letdown in comparison to the single-player experience.
Interesting.
So you have to think always, even single-player, as you control the two characters at the same time, you have to think about the different combinations.
So there's equipping your character for battle, and then there's equipping your character for the battle of the social hierarchy.
Here it's just the equipment is just for the outfits.
Yeah.
So the game is, in fact, the game is divided in several days. We wanted to have a kind of day cycle mechanic, and we wanted that because we really like to have this story set in a long period. So we wanted the player to feel that this character at the beginning of the game, they are just like normal kids, and they get better and better, and they became heroes day after day. So we wanted to tell a story that being a hero doesn't take only one day, it takes a lot of days. So we try to insert in the dungeon RPG mechanics kind of day cycle, so we can make them evolve day after day. So every morning you got a kind of morning routine where you have to equip yourself with only clothing, with only clothes. And after, when you go down to the dungeons, you can equip with more dungeon equipments. So dungeon equipments get above your teenager's outfit. So you get some. Sometimes you get some crazy looks with incomplete armors on your teenager outfit. So that's what we wanted to have. We wanted to have a big contrast between the two worlds. So they live in a human world, in the human world, and they go to a kind of really classic medieval fantasy world. So we wanted to mix the two with the presence of these two characters bringing their sneakers, bringing their jeans, and putting some armors and putting some helmets.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and we even have one goblin who's a big fan of sneakers, and he reveals the hidden power. Yeah.
So we inserted some goblins in town. So here you are in the human part of the town. So you have a lot of different shops.
And you have control over this.
Yeah, you control the base.
Tell us about the kind of activities you can do in town.
So in town, here, for example, you are in the boxing center. In the boxing center, it's the place where you learn how to fight. So at the surface, you have boxing, and below the boxing center, you have a kind of goblin arena, and you get the goblin sword master that teaches you how to use sword, and he unlocks also abilities for the players. So you get this kind of shops, of places, and you get also the hidden place in the town. Is the Goblin Street. So here,
and this is how we're getting.
This is the Goblin Street. The Goblin Street is more like a classical, the classical village in, for example, Diablo.
Sure.
So at the beginning of the game, this village is totally empty, and then you have to free
the contrast of like putting on jeans, going down, buying a shield.
Yes, yeah. And you have, at the beginning it's totally empty, and you have to free them in the dungeons, and then they repopulate the place. And we have a lot of many different characters, and all of the characters have his own story, so you can develop the story day after day. So we wanted to have, the day cycle is not just here for the feeling, but we wanted to add some different mechanics in the story with the day cycle.
Great. So we're running a little bit short on time, but tell me about the campaign length as well as kind of the progression in terms of how you're ramping up mechanics and narrative throughout the duration of the campaign.
Yeah. So in fact, we are. So the story takes place. It begins with just a normal life of those two kids, and they just have to save their father. And so the game is divided in days, as I said, and the day is divided in two parts. So you got the morning part, where you have to equip yourself, you go to town, etc. And you got the night session. So here we are starting a night session. So when you go down the elevator, it's starting a night session. And during the night session, you can do all the dungeons you want, in fact. And it's only the equipment you bought the day before that would limit your progression. So when you get limited by your level, by your progression, you can say, okay, I got enough stuff, I'm just going to sleep, and I start another day. And the story, you got a lot of many different dungeons. You got some dungeons that will make the storyline advance. We got a lot of different bosses, we got a lot of different enemies, and we got a lot of different antagonists that will occur, that will have some different sense in the game.
That's very cool. I have to say, like, you look at a side-scroll beat-em-up action game, and you think, well, this is very simple, but this is deceptively complex. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Jerome Baptiste, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can definitely check out more Young Souls on IGN, so be sure to do that. The game looks awesome so far. And for Gamescom, don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back after this.
Fact. IGN is better at video games than all other outlets.
All video games. Who's a good boy?
We're also the best at being incredibly humble.
I just on you, kid.
I got
Yes! Introducing the all-new Up-It Nude! Up-It Nude's new and improved recipe is chock full of lists, let's plays, unboxings, special guests, goofs, guffaws, and other content too stupid for regular weekdays.
Like some sort of color-changing reptile stripper man. I'm doing it.
Don't touch it.
What's wrong with you?
Get corn snack. Game sucks. Bring it back.
Up at noon, weekends on IGN and YouTube.
Ja, einfacher Sieg, mega easy. Wir sind jetzt in Halle 5.1. Ich habe die Leonie weggeschickt, die war einfach zu lame. Die hat einfach verloren, hat nicht verdient, nochmal vor der Kamera zu stehen, hier in dem Merchandise-Area. Deswegen werde ich euch einfach ein bisschen rumführen.
Haha, nicht so leichter Deal. Du hast meine Fallenkarte aktiviert und es ist Zeit für ein Duell. Ich möchte eine Revanche. Bist du bereit dafür?
Ich bin bereit, dass du nochmal verlierst. Diesmal gehe ich es ein bisschen langsam an. Ich glaube, um Leonie zu schlagen, brauche ich einfach nur eine Scheißtasse. Also wirklich einfach eine Scheißtasse. Und das Geilste an der Scheißtasse, da ist auch noch Scheiße drin. Das heißt, Cornflakes, Suppe, was auch immer, dieses kleine Häufchen Elend wird euch immer begleiten. Und das finde ich super weird.
Okay, Adil, ich würde sagen, mit einer Kackhaufentasse kann ich leider nicht dealen, aber ich habe hier dieses fantastische Paar, Heels mit Wonder Woman drauf. Ich bin dran vorbeigelaufen und musste dann kurz stoppen, wieder zurücklaufen. Das ist nämlich kein gedruckter Schuh, der ist handgemalt. Die Leute hier von Canvas Warriors haben sich nämlich ganz schön was einfallen lassen und bemalen diese Schuhe und sie machen sogar Auftrag. Also wenn du sagst, hey, okay, das und das ist mein Lieblingscharakter, ich hätte das gerne auf dem Schuh, dann malen die dir das und schicken es dir zu. Da das hier auf der Gamescom mit den Schuhen halt mega lange dauert, haben sie auch so Cappies gemacht, die sie hier dann wirklich innerhalb von wenigen Stunden bemalen und die kannst du dann hier später wieder abholen. Also ich würde sagen, das ist schon ziemlich krass.
Eigentlich hatte ich vor, noch viel abgefahrene Dinge zu suchen als Leonie, aber ganz ehrlich, ich werde konstant abgelenkt von diesen geilen Figuren, gerade die großen. Hier haben wir zum Beispiel den Praise the Sun Dude von Dark Souls oder auch Solid Snake von Metal Gear Solid. Ich kann da einfach keinen klaren Kopf bewahren. Da ist so viel geiler Kram hier in Halle 5.1 und 5.2. Ich kann mich einfach nicht konzentrieren, da ist zu viel krasser Kram dabei. Also unbedingt mal auschecken, lohnt sich auf jeden Fall, alleine um es mal gesehen zu haben.